Usually takes about 20 seconds.
Margaret.
Hey, we are live on YouTube.
We have Susan and
Just logged out of it and went right back on.
yeah. Okay.
As in, close it, leave the meeting.
Art, you're sideways. There we go. You're muted if you're talking.
I should have leaned this way.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellen should be joining any second.
I don't see Donna anymore.
Here she comes back in. And Ellen.
Here we go.
Can you hear me, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna have to do it through my phone since I can't get a stable enough internet connection. So Marie, can you hear me? The problem I have is if I'm doing it on my phone, I can't read the public comments. So can you read them?
Yes.
Okay, when we get to that portion, thank you. Okay, Andy, are we ready to go or?
Yes, we are. We're live on YouTube.
Okay, all right, call to order the special meeting of the Temple City Unified School District Board of Education for Monday, June 29th, 2020 at 6:10 p.m. Roll call, Member Nolenberg,
Yes.
Member Smith,
Yes.
Member Espinosa,
Here.
Member Lynn,
Yes.
and I'm here also. So, announcement, tonight's meeting is being digitally recorded.
James.
Item 4 is the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight Member Nolenberg will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand and face the flag, probably Lynn's flag. And Put your hand over your over your heart and begin. I pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Everybody done?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Item 5 is public comment on agendas and non-agendized items. And since I'm having to use my phone for the meeting, I'm not able to read those items. So Marie is going to read them for us. So Marie, are you ready?
Okay, we'll start with Robin because Robin requested to speak. So we'll just have Robin speak first.
Okay, Robin, do you want to speak now or do you want to speak when we get to the item?
You're muted, Robin.
now is fine. I am going to be reading from my
Okay.
scribbled envelopes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So first of all, I want you to know that I really do want to support Kim and the district office because I know these are crazy times and people have been working hard and I don't want to, I'm not trying to sabotage anything. So I'm just going to read what I wrote. One of my concerns about the promotions and the raises that are on the agenda, besides the fiscal impact, is the fact that this comes right on the heels of the classified job study. People taking part in the job study were told that it was not about salaries, that no one would be getting more money. It was just strictly about job titles and responsibilities, job descriptions, that kind of thing. So, and there were a lot of job titles, more title changes, more than I thought there would be. So I'm afraid that classified people are going to see this as a slap in the face. They get more, we don't. It's kind of an us against them thing again. And that's happened in the district a lot. And we've tried really hard to change that. I think we've done a pretty good job of doing that. And I just would not like to see that happen again. Anyway, I totally understand where Kim is coming from. We had a good talk Sunday night at 10 and then again today in our meeting. And I get it, but I do think that this is going to be a difficult one for me to explain to my people. And I want to be supportive, but my question would be, is there possibly a way that this could be pulled for now and looked at again after the uncertainty of opening school, which, is a scary thing as it is, and the district finances are not such an unknown, like maybe in September or I don't know, maybe when we feel just a little more secure as far as how school is going to go and what our finances are. That's just my suggestion, question, whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Robin. Marie, we have another one.
I have number 2 is from Tessie. You want to read yours, Tessie?
Basically, I'm going to echo what Robin said. Is it's going to be very difficult, the timing. I don't want to undermine Kim. I feel very supportive of her, and that I feel that the timing needs to be a question, and it's going to be difficult to explain. And we're all dealing with uncertain times, and I'm not saying that I'm belittling anybody's work or anything like that. It's just I'm just going to echo what Robin said.
Thank you, Tessie.
Thank you.
Okay, I have another, well, I'll put that one after. Alan has one. You want to read yours, Alan?
I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry, and I have a very poor internet connection. And
Okay.
if you want to read it when we
sure-
get to that 11, you can read it at 11.
Okay, I'll hold it then till 11. Okay, and then there's one from Richard Escalera. And he says, I believe during this crisis, giving raises to anyone in our district should not be considered. We should all be content to have jobs during these times and not become greedy. We are lucky that the state didn't cut any funds. Please, let's not become greedy. And that was his public comment.
Thank you. Do you have another one? Marie?
I have a couple more. One is from
Okay.
Rachel Milan Ponce. And it says, why do they deserve a new title and pay raise? This should not be considered as a current option at this time. Let's focus on getting our students back to school on a safe method. Now is not the time for thinking of raises. And that was that comment.
Okay, thank you. You
And
have another one?
I have the last one I have here before we read Alan's later is from Jerry Jambazian. And his is, with the repurposing of the Dr. Doug Sears Learning Center and the large covered lunch area already in place, would the added shade area be needed? So that's
Okay.
something to consider on Jerry's.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Does anybody else have any public comment? Okay, well, we'll move on to item 6, which is written communications. And I did have one from Samantha Chen, who had some concerns about sexual assault on campus. Does anybody else have any written communications?
No.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7, which is a discussion information item, and it's guidelines on reopening of schools. Dr. Fricker, are you going to do that?
That would be me. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
let me share my screen with everyone. Okay, we all see. You all see? Okay, so really we are reporting out tonight on some of the preliminary Department of Health guidelines for the reopening of school. We don't have the official report from the Department of Health in terms of what all of the regulations are going to be or not going to be. State and local officials have talked to superintendents across the state in order to outline guidelines that all districts would have to abide by county. The state agencies have put out their guidelines for the public and for the safety and sanitation and the maintenance, security of campuses as schools go into the reopening phase. And what they have said is that the local public department health agencies can have more strict enforcement of that state guideline, but they can't have a less restrict guideline. So when we were talking to Dr. Farrar and the other LA County superintendents in terms of what her messages are going to be or her guidelines are going to be for all of the LA County districts, her regulations or guidelines, at least in those preliminary meetings that we've had in the past 2 weeks, have been a little bit more restrictive than the state guidelines. And that was really stated because LA County has seen an uptick in cases, and they've had an uptick in cases for the past couple weeks. So she felt that being a little bit more restrictive was the best case scenario for LA County. So I can go through some of the preliminary discussions that we've had and what the impact would be for schools and school districts in the LA County area. If we're comparing it to any other county, they may be a little bit different. If you look at other school districts outside of our county, they may have different guidelines that they're given to their constituents, but we have to follow our LA County Department of Public Health. So I just wanted to give you that kind of disclaimer ahead of time of where all of this is coming from. Again, I want you to know that these are the unofficial guidelines. These are the best guidelines that we have at this time until that official guideline is posted and is out. First, before we get started, I just want to send a message of gratitude to all of our constituents for help in this area. The Board of Education has been very supportive through this whole closure period and allowing us to look at what's ahead of us, meet those demands that are in front of us, and been extremely supportive. So I do want to thank the Board of Education for your leadership. Union leadership, we have gone back and forth throughout this entire time discussing all sorts of topics that have come across our table and how we are as a district meeting those challenges, facing those challenges, and more importantly, making sure that we're taking care of our membership in terms of our classified and our certificated membership. Doing what's right by our staff is extremely important to me, and supporting our staff is extremely important to me, as well as in supporting our students and the learning environment with which that they are subject. So I want to just appreciate all of the union leaders that are with us. Site leadership and activities directors, and they have really been the boots on the ground, leading the sites and making sure that we attend to all of those things that students want and need, especially as we go into, hopefully, with this August 7th graduation. So I just want to thank all the leadership there. Classified certificated staff, there's no words that can even tell you how grateful I am to all of the work that has been done, all of the committees that have been formed, all of the time that people have invested in helping us put together every step of every plan along the way, and then moving forward with the technology committee, and then the superintendent task force that I'll talk about a little bit later on in the presentation, for putting together all of the steps that it's going to take to actually reopen schools safely for our staff and for our students, and that is our primary concern. So thank you to all of our classified staff who have been working in the trenches, and our certificated staff who have been working with our students and making sure that every detail has been accounted for. To the parents and students, parents really have been an integral part of our journey thus far, and they've had their students at home and they've been dealing with, the online transition. We have polled our parents, and so we've heard from them, and we want to include them as a voice in this process along with our students. And our students, we miss them, and we can't wait to see them soon as August approaches. The Temple City Council, I've been back and forth with the members of the council, and the mayor have been a tremendous support along the way, along with Jerry Jambezian, and then various community members that have supported our district. So I want to thank them, district administrators and support staff. They've really been, coming in and carrying the load and working some extremely long hours in order to make sure that communications go out, that planning happens, that research happens, that we can bring forward the best proposals that we can possibly muster up in a time where I keep saying it's like walking on quicksand. Everything changes by the day. Sometimes at the start of the day, at the end of the day, it's different. And we are traversing a situation that no one has ever traversed before. And so I cannot thank them enough. I couldn't do the job that we've done without their help and support, and along with the cabinet members. So to all of those stakeholder groups, it has really been a collaborative and team effort. So I just want to thank everyone individually. I hope I didn't leave anybody out, because that's always the worry of not including someone. So anyway, thank you all for all of your support, leadership, guidance, and definitely the joining of us in this journey. So when we go to look at the framework for reopening of schools, we really have to start at personnel. And we have to start at looking at how do we return staff to work, and that would be the July return to staff for many of our classified employees in 105 and 823. And then also, how do we return the certificated staff to work in August as we go towards reopening. Dr. Makovitz and I have spoken at length about the processes and procedures of doing this and making sure that they come back to a safe environment. Also looking at employee leaves and employee leave management, which has become and is becoming a more labor-intensive process as we work with staff who have different requirements. Illness contact tracing. Contact tracing is something that the Department of Health is wanting the school districts to kind of manage. And that is, if people come in contact or become exposed or become ill, we need to have contact tracing to see who they have been in contact with, so that we can send out the proper notifications and keep other people in the vicinity and surrounding areas safe. And then training and communication. So those are the things that in the Personnel Services Department we are currently working on. With regard to budget or fiscal management, We did go through the governor's June budget revise, which was better than the May revise, which had a very devastating blow to districts, which I'll get into in a minute with the 10% reduction. That seems to be lifted. It hasn't been approved, but seems to be at least lifting. There's hope on the horizon. We also want to make sure that we look at cash flow management, making sure that we are fiscally conservative, and we always try to be, to make sure that if deferrals happen, deferrals meaning that there is a lag time between state funding and then the receiving of those state funds, those deferral periods could be 3-month period, or it could be up to a 6-month period projected. So we want to make sure that we are looking at that. And then any spending that we have to do, and unfortunately we do, to meet the safety and security demands moving forward, what reserve funding or non-reserve funding do we have to use to make all of these things happen and work according to what the guidelines say we have to do. So those are things that we're looking over there in fiscal management, curriculum, and instruction. First of all, we have to look at aligning everything to the standards-based curriculum and making sure that we are empowering our teachers and giving our teachers the resources to provide those standard-based curriculum options to students in a virtual environment and in an in-person or classroom environment. And those are the two options that we will be discussing moving forward. We did procure the learning management system that's going to help house that digital curriculum and empower the sharing of that digital curriculum amongst staff. So we're looking forward to the leadership there, and then professional development that goes along with it. That would be professional development in the summertime, and it would extend through the year and possibly into next year, depending on, you know, the needs of our staff. Going more into the safety and security measures that we will be looking at. One, keeping the facilities safe and sanitized, having sanitation schedules. Also, the social distancing requirement that is imposed, along with symptom monitoring and reporting. We do have an obligation to report to the Department of Public Health what if people are presenting symptoms, if people become ill, and then the contact tracing that I mentioned before in the personnel services report. And then the protective equipment that various people within the organization will be using. And depending on your interaction and role responsibility, that protective equipment may look different. For some, according to the personnel, the public health order, if you are working alone in an isolated office or independently, say out in the open on a field somewhere, you don't necessarily have to have the protective equipment. But if you are in any vicinity, any contact with any individual, you would have to have mask, face covering. We'll kind of get into some of those details. In some cases, a face shield. If you're working in some of the special education populations or the nurse's office, that sort of thing. The idea, just to let everybody know and kind of round out some understanding, if you're working outside, there is risk of heat exposure, heat illness, that kind of thing. If you have a mask over your face, you can overheat more quickly. And so we want to make sure that we are providing all of our staff with protections that they need, but also the understanding for everyone else. So if you see somebody on the field and they don't have a mask or protective equipment on, it's not that they are disobeying the regulations, but they have to monitor their heat, their body heat index. So that is something that we need to consider and keep those employees safe and sound as well. So more of those guidelines will be coming once we get the official document from the Department of Health, and then we can translate all of that information to all of you in your respective, in our staff's respective classification and area. And then finally, wait till this comes in, the Department of Health guidelines. These guidelines are, like I said, are unofficial, and they really relate to the health and wellness of students, the health and wellness of our staff, community access to our campuses, the system that we put in place, or the systems we put in place for infection control measures to try to curtail the virus spread and curtail, you know, the exposure from one individual to another. We have seen that the social distancing and the protections between face-to-face contact does eliminate the spread of the virus. And so those guidelines will be kind of extrapolated across the district. And then illness management, should people become ill or exposed to people who have tested positive or become ill, it's important that we put in some illness management protocol so that we could protect that as well. Okay, moving on. So information gathering and decision making. This is just the timeline from the initial closure to now, March. So we did start with some parent surveys and make sure that we are working with our parents to get a feel of what they feel comfortable with, what they don't feel comfortable with, what they're interested in terms of their instructional environment moving forward, whether they have fears and where those are. We did hear from the Pediatrics Association that there is a very large awareness being created that schools do provide essential services for students, and schools are a key component of the health and welfare of our youth. And so being at home, they can have isolation, they can have social emotional situations that come up that are difficult to handle or manage. And so we do know the vital role that schools play. We do want to play our part in making sure that students have a safe and secure place to come to school and interact and be educated by our highly qualified teachers. So that's our goal. We are starting with and have continued to parent survey and gather information from parents so that we really build a plan with their voice inside of that plan. Going forward with communication, we are going to have a monthly newsletter that's going to go out from the district, just giving updates along with the superintendent TCUSD weekly communications that we've been sending out. Just any updated information, any guidelines, any next steps in the process will be communicated the very same way that we have been. It's easier to have a point person in charge of those communications and making sure that they do out timely, and that they're inclusive of all of the different component parts of the district. So I just want to appreciate, Ms. Hannah Getty for sending those out and on behalf of the district, and making sure that our communications are as solid as they possibly can be. Like I said, we're walking on quicksand, so some things change very, very quickly and very rapidly. We also have Parent Square, which is our Aries communication system. Last year, we did a lot of online transition to automated systems. So we are going to be using the Parent Square Aries communication system for parent communications. This will allow two-way communications. So if parents or teachers need to communicate out to parents, and parents can obviously communicate back through that system, same thing for us. And it just would hopefully increase the level of communication we have with all of our stakeholders across the district. And then finally, the website information and resources. The website will be launching in July 6th. And so it will be inclusive of all of the COVID information that many of our families will need or have want quick access to. With regard to safety conditions, so we will be continuing as we have from March until now, the COVID-19 case monitoring. And as you can see, we have an uptick in the COVID cases across the nation. I was gonna say the state of California, but it's across the nation. And so that's gonna be of a concern, and we're gonna keep a close eye on that. Obviously, the Department of Public Health, when cases surge, you have a more restrictive environment to work with. So this is going to ebb and flow for a bit of time, and we have to have a plan that's going to be flexible, but it's also going to provide safety for our staff and our students. So we do truly understand that. And we will be monitoring that and giving a close eye to the governor's mandates, as well as the health guidelines and mandates as they change or as they shift as we move along this COVID cycle. The educational adjustments from that safety plan, we may expect in the future an opening and then intermittent closures. So we have to be prepared for that, and then any heightened restrictions, as I had mentioned before. With curriculum decisions, we are building on that learning management system. We're going toward a blended educational model where students could have in-class time and virtual time working with the same curricular material. The details of that blended model has not been solidified. We are waiting for the work to begin with the superintendent's task force so that we actually have a coalition of our educators, our TCUSD educators, that will advise us on the practical applications of that and advise us as to how to curtail that plan and detail out that plan. Supporting that is technology and that digital platform with which the curriculum is going to sit. So we do want a robust interactive platform that the learning management system will provide. However, we do understand that with that comes the support element, and we want to make sure that we are working with 823 and 105 to make sure that we have the correct technology support through our staff that can help students access that and make sure that they have easy access to all of their online as well as staff. So that is a primary concern, and that would be a shift in resources that we are looking at making. Enrollment confirmation, we are looking at the data confirmation and then again parent surveys to select the instructional program that they are wanting their students to participate in. And then we do have to be mindful that we're not sure if there's going to be mandates on childcare options, but we do understand that school districts are a primary resource for custodial care while we have the parents and adults in the workforce working at their current jobs. So we want to make sure that if this is a requirement, we build it into our planning. And then if it is no longer a requirement for the K-12 environment, then we can move in a different direction. But as of now, this has not been ruled out of one of the things that we may need to provide, and that is custodial care or child care options for our staff and our families. So that's why this is in here. And then that rounds out just the communications of where we've been and kind of where we're going. Some important dates, just a reminder to consider. July 6th is hopefully when we're going to get the official Department of Public Health guidelines. It's the week of July 6th. I know that July 6th. We're hoping to get them sooner rather than later, but they're still not out for publication yet. We are going to, on July 6th, start that superintendent's task force. That those meetings will begin, and we will start rounding out the practicalities of some of the mandates and the guidelines that we're given, and then how do we put them into practice where we can absorb that in the district and make them function for our staff and our students and our families. And then any purchase orders, anything that we need to plan ahead or purchase in order to meet the opening of school requirements, those need to go in quite quickly. As you can see, other districts will be putting in similar requisitions or purchase orders. And so if there's anything that needs installation, that adds to the time. And we want to make sure that everything is up and running prior to the start of school as much as humanly possible. So we do understand the priority for that and any purchase orders that we have to move forward. Superintendent task force, again, the second meeting will be the 13th, and we'll have plenty of time between those 2 days. If there's a week in time to get stakeholder input to add to our planning effort. July 20th is going to be the third superintendent task force meeting time, and then that's going to be refinement and finalization of the opening of school plan. Now, again, it's going to be the finalization up to that point. There could be some shifts and changes moving forward from that point, just depending on the spread of the disease and where we are with the environmental conditions. July 22nd would be the reopening of schools plan to the Board of Education. That would be the presentation where we really detail out all of the decisions, all of kind of the practicalities of the plan. And then from the business department, we'll also bullet out the financial impact from all of that planning on the district and where those funds would be coming from and how we would be restructuring some of those things to meet this demand. August 7th is the high school graduation ceremony and celebration. That's a highlight, and we are hoping that everything is going to go according to plan. We had a presentation at the last board meeting from the high school staff, and so we really look forward to that. I know our high school seniors do as well, along with the families of those seniors. So August 20th would be a news teacher staff member orientation. So I know that the personnel department is looking forward to that and making sure that we onboard staff with efficiency and effectiveness, and we actually equip them up to the Temple City standard. From this point in time forward, we have just prioritized staffing needs. We are hiring the certificated positions first, and then going through so that we don't overtax the human resource department. There are 3 ladies in the department, and with all of the added requirements, we want to kind of pace that in the hiring process so that we don't inadvertently overstress or overtax our staff. So as we go through that hiring priority, I know that Dr. Makovets has a good handle on the positions that are up for rehire, how they're being posted, and the interview process that would result, and working with the sites to make sure that we are fully staffed by the start of school. And then August 24th is the Welcome Back Staff Professional Development. We do hope to have some employee celebrations for the staff who retired, and then also our Teachers of the Year. And then August 26th, we would be opening school and then welcoming our students back. So that's kind of the tight timeline that we're under. I can't tell you the tremendous amount of pressure that puts on a very select few, but I think that given those key dates and hitting this timeline, it's doable. It's going to take an exerted effort, and I just want to thank everybody ahead of time for being along in the journey. So getting to the superintendent's task force, again, it's the practical application. It's one thing to decide like what we need to do, and it's another thing to decide how exactly we need to do it. And then all the refinement that goes into the how exactly we're going to do something. So we do want to make sure that we adjust staffing based on the increased need in various departments. We can see, and you will see later on in the presentation, that technology and human resources and some parts of instruction are already showing an increased need in terms of human resources and staffing. And so we really want to take a poll as we go, a temperature check, to make sure that not only are we putting things forward, but we're also providing the supports that lay underneath those things, so that when we do put them forward, that they have the greatest chance and likelihood of being successful. And really, we rely on our classified and certificated staff and the staffing support structures that we are going to be developing along the way and putting in place to make sure that those systems are supported as much as humanly possible. Along with the financial strategy, anytime you shift staffing, there is a financial strategy that goes along with it, and also the additional expenditures that we will be incurring to make sure that we meet those Department of Public Health and state and federal guidelines that we need to put in place to ensure that the school reopening is safe, and that we have the protective measures in place that we need to have. So we will again have that financial strategy spelled out in the July 22nd meeting. Curriculum and instruction, that virtual environment, and that build out of that shared digital curriculum. And with professional development, we're heavily relying on our certificated staff to work and be compensated throughout the summertime so that we can be ready by the fall in a supportive mechanism for all teachers who are coming back, and then having to do that blended learning model. That is no short stretch. That is a huge undertaking in and of itself. And, you know, again, there's many people who are coming forward and rising to that challenge, and we are happy to compensate them for their work and their effort in helping us do that. Along with safety, wellness, the guidelines and the initiatives, the adjustments of protocols and practices, and the safeguards that we're going to have to be putting in place from the campus facility all the way through that protective equipment. That is something that we have to develop with that task force, and the practical applicability of bringing back people with confidence that we are putting in every measure possible to keep them as safe and sound as possible. And so we are going to really rely on that stakeholder group and coming together to make the hard decisions on what those safety protocols are, and where and how we put them in place. So we do have guidelines from the state, and we will have guidelines from the Public Department of Health, but then turning that into a reality is something different. So we are going to rely on that task force to help us do that. And again, those are the state, federal, local government governance orders and the regulations that we will be abiding by. And then we will have parent and community input along the way. So when we break out some of the safety and security measures that we are looking at, and from the unofficial Department of Public Health guidelines, the facility adjustments would be decluttering of rooms, offices, and common areas. Anytime that we can remove any unneeded, unnecessary, critically essential materials or equipment, and in some cases furniture from the classrooms, it's easier for our custodial teams to come in and keep those classrooms, office spaces, and common areas clean and sanitized from day to day, and make sure that we are keeping those environments as COVID-free as possible. We will divide the class rosters into 2 cohorts of students because we do have to adhere to the 6-foot restriction and the social distancing guidelines. So by taking a classroom of students and say dividing them in half, we will be able to meet that 6-foot restriction guideline. We did go through all of the campuses and measure out the square footage of the rooms and measure out the spacing of the desks to make sure that we could meet this guideline, and that kind of led the basis of the development of the plan. In a minute, we're going to see a video on just one scientific strategy at helping districts or schools or communities look at the social distancing and the reentry process just from a scientific method. We are going to be looking at the HVAC and we're going to be doing all of the filter changes so that the filters will all be brand new at the start of the school year. We've already gone through a sanitization of all of our schools. So the campuses should be clean and sanitized, and then we're going to do that filter change. Also, we have already talked to M&O to do water and systems checks, so that since our campuses have been closed for an extended period of time, we want to make sure when all of those systems come back online that there's no residual anything left over. There's nothing that we need to be worried about, that everything is flushed through, and that all of the systems are working as they should and they normally would. So all of those systems checks will be occurring. According to the guidelines, we do have to have sanitation schedules for all TCUSD campuses and locations. So those will be put in place through the, I think Ms. Penn did refer to the classification study. And in that classification study, we had noticed that there wasn't a supervisor of custodial. In this case, we do think that it is a wise investment to invest in a supervisor of custodial care to make sure that our chemicals meet the OSHA requirements and also the other requirements that we have to abide by, and that they are as least toxic as possible, and they're actually more friendly to, people who suffer from asthma. So all of those things need to be monitored. The schedules need to be put in place, and they have to have daily and weekly updates and checks on that. So we are investing in that area. And then finally, with facilities, the ingress, egress, and access points to campus will be limited so that we can filter people in and on campus and then off campus in a systematic format, so that we can do the health screening that is required in order to allow the people who do gain access to the campuses and reassure that everyone is gaining access to campus and that they're in the best health possible. If there's any potential for someone to be affected or has been affected or has an elevated temperature, then those systems need to be screened, and those individuals need to be kind of redirected. So that comes to the health screening and illness tracking. According to the Department of Public Health, we do have to have some daily systems check or health screening check for anybody who enters and accesses the campus. What that means is you can monitor their signs and symptoms. There's a bunch of different ways you can monitor each individual person who accesses the campus, their signs and symptoms, to see if they are showing any symptoms of COVID-19. And temperature checks is one, but also monitoring if they have cough or if they have any problems breathing or if they have any flu-like symptoms. Those types of things need to be checked. So we are looking into, and later on, Dr. Makovitz will actually report on software systems that we can use to help us do those daily symptom screenings so that those individuals can access our campus, and we have to get them in and on as quickly as possible. Working with the city, we don't want large backups either, so we want to do this as efficiently as possible, but as effectively as possible. So that we also are looking at bioscreening thermometers that can scan people on entry to see if they have elevated temperatures or not. And so we want to just eliminate any chance of people coming to campus showing any signs or symptoms or elevated temperatures. We understand that people can be asymptomatic, and that is something that, we can't truly try or have a mechanism to avoid, but we are trying to at least identify anybody who is showing signs and symptoms or have elevated temperatures from coming on campus and then potentially infecting other individuals. Having said that, we do need guidelines for medically fragile staff and students or staff who become ill while at school. Some of these responses, the symptoms, we have to look at symptom response, and if anyone is showing signs or symptoms, we do need to send them home. Prior to sending them home, we may have to have what they call as an isolation room, so that we isolate them from, potentially exposing or infecting somebody else, and then asking them to go home for a duration of time of isolation or a duration of time of quarantine. And those guidelines are posted on the CDC website and the CDE website, and also the Department of Public Health websites. And so we would be using those same mechanisms and guidelines for isolation and quarantine, and making those same recommendations. All of that would need to filter through the Human Resource Office for that contact tracing component that I talked to you briefly about before, which would add a significant amount of workload to the Human Resource Office. There is a mechanism where if we do have people who are showing signs and symptoms, or who do have positive test results, or do have positive or could have potential exposure, we do need to notify everyone, and that's why the contact tracing becomes important. And we also need to notify the Department of Public Health. Community access at this time, according to the Department of Public Health, community access would be restricted for campus visitors. So access is going to be significantly limited to staff and students and essential workers. Essential workers would be those workers who have to make delivery or have to come to campus for some specified reason. We do have to have communications that are sent out to staff, students, community, family, and those essential workers, either by informational text or by signage posted around the campus to let people know how to come on, how to come off, and then also how, if they're delivering a package, like how would that package be delivered, where you can leave it, that sort of thing, or how you can make contact with someone to come and retrieve it. There is restriction to facility use permits at this time and this restriction is to reduce any outside contamination from coming onto the campus, so that we can actually keep the sanitation efforts that the custodial team puts in place as strict as possible and as heightened as possible. So restrictions would be for facility use, also for assemblies, performances, and athletic competitions and programs. The only athletic competition and program that they are thinking of still allowing would be individualized sports. We can practice as long as you're 6 foot distance, but you can also do things like tennis or things like golf, where it's more of an individualized sporting event. CIF is waiting for the Department of Public Health orders to come out, and then they are going to follow the Department of Public Health guidelines with regard to those activities. Transportation, there is strict sanitation guidelines for transportation as to how many students can be on like a bus at one time, and that the use would have, the equipment and the seats and the buses would have to be sanitized between uses. So those would be posted again once the guidelines come forward. But we're anticipating that, and we're working with all of our students who use transportation to make sure that they are safe to and from campus. Childcare and ELP programs, there will be guidelines for adhering to the 6-foot social distancing guidelines, and then all of the protective equipment and the requirements that we would have to abide by in order to provide childcare and then after school ELP programs or services. And then finally, those universal precautions, again, we need signs throughout the campus, identifying the 6-foot social distancing. Workspaces would have to be earmarked or demarked in terms of the 6-foot space allotted for each person's workspace. And if there's a situation like a reception area where you could have face-to-face contact, there has to be a 6-foot demarcation line where you could not go closer to the employee. With that, we are looking at face masks and coverings that we would be required to provide in some cases for our staff and our students. And then that personalized protective equipment along with partitions. So if there is areas where we know that there needs to be face-to-face contact, or there could be face-to-face contact between individuals, we would have to have a plexiglass partition or some sort of partition barrier for to prevent the transmission of any droplets on the air from going from one person to another person. Again, signs for access, directions, health guidelines have to be clearly posted and have to be posted throughout the campus. Things that would normally be common areas, we have to have separated by the 6-foot distancing. Things like bubblers or water fountains would not be able to be used at this time, just due to the potential of contamination from one individual to another. So we have facilities and maintenance operations looking at some of those things on campus where we would need to make changes, or we would need to restrict use of some of those pieces of equipment. Bathrooms and stalls, they would have to be every other person, so that you couldn't have 2 people standing within a 6-foot radius of each other. So all of those things need to be looked at with maintenance operations and then adjusted accordingly so that we adhere to that. Finally, facility and food service programs, they also have to have sanitation schedules, and then the food services department has already been spoken to about students who would be on campus and serving the meals to those students in a fashion where you can adhere to the 6-foot guidelines and the partitions between the food and patrons and the personnel, you know, for the charging for the food and the people who are coming through the line. So the students who are coming through the line. So we are making all of those adjustments on the food services side. And also for the students who would be at home in the virtual environment or at home, you know, maybe if they are medically fragile and unable to come to school, we would either have meal pickup services for those students whose family or family member can come and pick up the meal, the lunch meal that it would be prepared for them. And if it is a situation where it's a medically fragile student and they don't have the ability to come, then meal delivery. So both of those things would be also put in place. Plans would be put in place to address, you know, students in all of the categories so that we ensure that they get their meal service. And then before we go into the curriculum instructional page, I'm just going to turn it over to Andy. Andy's going to show a brief video on just one of the scientific strategies to approach reentry, and it's really in kind of phasing into full reentry. And I think that the science does make a bit of sense. I'll explain it as how we would apply it to the curriculum and instructional side, and then we can move forward. But for right now, I just would like Andy to please play the video. Is your mic on? Do you want to talk with her?
Andy, it's muted.
I know, I'm trying to get to Andy.
Sorry about that.
It's still muted.
Why is it not working? So you still can't hear me, huh?
No, we can't hear the video. We can hear you, but we can't hear the video. The sound on the video.
Okay, let me see why it's doing that.
Should be when you show the little thing that says shared sound.
The balance is both their health.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Are you still hearing me or are you hearing everybody?
We can hear it. It's,
Okay, good.
We have a health epidemic and we have an economic and social epidemic at the same time. We really have a very strong dilemma here, how to balance between two evils. One is staying in lockdown and the other is opening it up, risking having a resurgence. It's very clear that keeping lockdown on is devastating for the economy, and it's clear that continuing lockdown for long times is untenable. I think what we need now is a solution that would enable us in the next 1, 2, 3 months time scale, find a way to get the economy back into work and to get people to have their balance again. That the balance is both their health and their ability to work and do things. And that's where the idea of using intermittent work plays a big part. The idea is a 2-week cycle where you work for 4 days and then you enter 10 days of lockdown. Then the next 2 weeks, work for 4 days and 10 days of lockdown. We know that when a person gets infected, they have a latent period. They're not infectious for about 3 days. They can't infect others. After that, they become infectious and then they get symptoms. So the 4-10 schedule works this way. If you get infected in a work day, you're in your latent period and you only become infectious or you reach your peak infectiousness at home when lockdown, when you don't have access to many other people. And that restricts the virus's ability to infect many people. That brings the virus replication number below 1, which we know is the magic number for the number of new cases to decline. All you need to do is enforce work days and lockdown days. It could be on the scale of a company, it could be on the scale of a county, or a state, or an entire country. Now you have an economy that's predictable. It's a part-time economy. You know when you go to work, when shops will be open, when everybody will be outside. It might very well be that with 40% of the days, you can achieve much more than 40% of the work or more than 40% of the revenue because of 2 aspects. One is that on those 40% of days, you can work longer hours. You might be working much longer hours, so effectively you might be achieving much more. You can also make it even better. You can divide this population into 2 groups of households, Group A and Group B. And have Group A do a 4-10 schedule, and Group B do a 4-10 schedule, schedule, but on alternating weeks. You have the extra benefit of reduced density. Plus, you have the economy running with shifts almost continuously.
You can achieve really close to 100% of the business days.
I want to say also that with intermittent work, you give people these 4 days also to do their critical medical checkups and to take care of their health, take care of their mental health, to see their family, to have breathing space. And that makes adhering to the lockdown days much easier. This was developed in a combination of mathematical models and epidemiologists. The mathematical models we use are the classical models that inform policy all over the world. We think it's urgent to get this information to decision makers in order to have a more responsible plan for next strategy, or at least a plan for what happens if there is a resurgence.
In the long term, we're looking for a vaccine, and we want to win the fight against the virus altogether and get back to our lives. But in the midterm, we need to find a way to get back to at least partial work and get the economy back to work. And 4 out of 10 days would enable that. And would buy us the time for the scientists and as well as others to find a long-term solution.
My name is Scott Harrison. Just listen. This is my wife, my son, and my one on the way. I lead an organization called Charity Water, and our mission is to bring clean water to everyone on the...
Andy, can you stop the sound on that?
Yes. Yeah, I just did. I had to get out of full screen.
Does it let you share screen? There you go. I think you have to share. I'm gonna share now. Hit share.
Okay, so when we look at how that intermittent closure or that intermittent opening would look, we really started to play on the curriculum instruction side with the idea, the concept of the 410 schedule. So if we had students coming onto campus, again, remember we have to have 2 cohorts of students. So by dividing those classrooms in half of the students would come on for 4 days and get in-person instruction from our highly qualified teachers and staff. And then they would go into a virtual 10-day period. And so that would allow us to effectively manage the number of students we have without drastically having to increase staff by double, which was the first kind of major hurdle that the districts faced, was if we had to adhere to the 6-foot distancing, well, we don't even have enough classrooms. We don't even have enough staff to divide classrooms in half and then replicate that on a very large scale. So how do we do that within the parameters, the guidelines, the classrooms, the space, the staff that we do have? How can we apply a solution that would allow us to meet that demand and then thrive in it? So when we looked at this, we did find that by bringing the students on campus and when they, during those 4 days, and then when they would become in their infectious period, they would be away from our staff, right? So that would put in an extra layer for our staff and a protective measure for our staff as well. So the practicality of actually working that through and that system through would be something that the superintendent task force with those groups of stakeholders that come together, they would decide the practicality exactly how that we would accomplish that. But the premise is that students would come on for 4 days and then group A would be home for 10. Group B then the next week would come on for 4 days and then be home for 10. So 4 days isn't quite a work week. So we have 5 days. So the 5th day, that Friday, would be a time where students could virtually contact teachers as like it would be a working office hour day where they could attend students, they could work with students in a virtual environment, students who needed more time, more attention, more practice, more skill development in certain areas. They could look through and assess how their students are doing, and they could use that as a very functional day, observing all of the contractual requirements that we have, but also providing extra services and support for students who really truly need it. We have worked with both Dr. Gomez, who originally brought this idea forward to us on behalf of curriculum instruction, and then we've also been working with Dr. Ketarayan from special education to see how this would apply to all of our specialized populations. So that would be the concept or the framework with which we can build a plan moving forward. Again, all of those details would need to be rounded out within that task force and that committee work that would still be laying ahead of us. So that's the premise with which we would be moving forward. The blended learning model, again, the 4 days in class, that 5th day would be office hour day, and it would also be specialized instruction for those students who need it the most. And then those students would go into a 10-day virtual cycle. That would comprise that blended model, especially upon reentry. Now, we don't know how long this is going to take or progress. So I can't tell you the end date of when we would go back into a full on-campus, on-premise reopening, but this would be our attempt to phase into that full reopening. Families, we are polling families to see what option they would want to select for their instructional components. Some of our families say, I just want to have my students at home. I'm an at-home mom. I can stay with them. I can work with them. And some families are going to select that. Some families want their students to be on campus and get the full range of academic instruction from our highly qualified staff. And so through those families, those family surveys, we are going to determine, the ultimate student population, and then kind of build that plan and factor those student numbers into the plan that we are building. Again, instructional technology is going to be the foundational support underneath this plan, because you do see that we have still a large reliance on a virtual environment for delivering curriculum and delivering instruction. We have every intention and plan in place to make sure that our staff is professionally developed and has access to development through the summer, professional development through the summer and throughout the school year. We are really committed to supporting this effort. I think that we have worked exceedingly well with the union leadership, and we want to make sure that our staff is completely supported. In doing that, we understand that there needs to be a tech system underneath, so that there should be problems with the device, should be problems accessing your online curriculum. If there is any difficulty, we do have the tech support, which we need to build out in a little bit more. That's tech support to help those students and staff navigate this digital environment. We also need to just finalize the device inventory and the checkout process for the fall. We did have all of the students return devices at the end of the school year last year that we did check out on the March 13th timeframe, but we will have a standardized checkout process in working with Mr. Contreras and the union leadership of 823. We know that we need to add resources to tech to make sure that this process is fully equipped and we're able to deliver that come the opening of school. Teacher course unit and curriculum building, that's going to be happening and ongoing throughout the year. I did receive an article from one of our staff members, and it really did provide an education on the curriculum development and how long that truly takes. So this is not a short-term investment. This is something that is going to be a long-term investment for the district. And again, we want to support it fully. And it takes about, it was estimated in the article and the supplemental articles I read in conjunction with it, about 2 to 3 years to fully develop out your online digital curriculum. And so we want to have staff coming together to do that. We do have curriculum that we have purchased in math and English language arts that is of a digital basis, but the other curriculums, we want to get in developed and put in place as quickly as possible. Again, community and childcare programs. We are looking at, should we have to provide childcare programs for that custodial care for staff members and or parents who are in that 10-day virtual period and they say, like, I have to go to work, I'm unable to have my child at home, they do need custodial care. We are looking at a facility for custodial care and a community partnership to bring that to light. I know that Ms. Getty in Student Services is actively working on partnering with community agencies and making sure that should we need to provide this, that we are able to provide this critical childcare so that our parents can be at work and their students can be in a safe location, receiving the educational components in terms of the student be working on their virtual work or maybe logging into their classroom teacher's lesson, but being able to have supervision and make sure that they are well taken care of in the meantime. And then specialized education programs, working again with Dr. Ketarayan, making sure that all of our students have prior written notice, because there is anytime there is a change in the curricular program, we do want to make sure that that is clearly articulated to our families, those with IEPs. And then we have to address adult transition programs. So this is going to be an added, a large added duty and responsibility to Dr. Ketarayan as our adult transition program. And those are students in the specialized education program from year 18 to 22. They are still within our system of education. We are still in requirement to provide educational services for this group of students. And we currently had them in a program with Arcadia. But because of the social distancing, the 6-foot radius and the program alterations that they're going through, there's not room for our students in the Arcadia program. And we've looked all across our SELPA in every single district, and no districts have enough room for students that belong to other districts, not their own. So we're looking at bringing that adult transition program and having to bring that adult transition program into our district and servicing those 11 students through our means. This would require us hiring a certificated staff member to work with that population of student. And then we would need to have a place for them to be and a classroom for them to be and an educational setting for them to work within. So we are currently working on that. I know that Dr. Ketarayan is putting a lot of work and effort into that and working with site principals to secure a location and then also secure the program materials, facilities, chair, furniture, and then also the staffing that's going to be required on the certificate side and the classified side to support those students. When we look at personnel services, briefly mention some of these things that are coming in and they're going to be added requirement for personnel. The employee leaves, we have to provide leaves for staff members that are at risk, 65 years of age or older or medically fragile. And then sick leaves for individuals who are affected by COVID or who have exposure and that need to be in isolation or need to be in a quarantine situation. So they will be processing a lot more and working more diligently with staff members who are affected in either one of these risk areas or group areas. They will be responsible for contact tracing. We are going to be working with our registered nurse within our district to make sure that we have a system where we can contact trace and make sure if you have the illness, you have a positive test for the illness or you have exposure to the illness, that we identify those individuals that you have been in contact with and then send notifications. We are currently drafting, letters and communications so that we have a standard format and standard way of notifying individuals, and then also providing the resources for them to seek treatment, get treatment, or go into isolation or go into quarantine. When we look at other things that will come on and will upsurge in terms of work that's required for the personnel services, it's substitutes. So as people are on medical leaves or at-risk leaves, or they have childcare needs and they are unable to come to work, we are going to have to provide substitutes for them, both on the classified and the certificated side, and then manage those substitutes, making sure that we adhere to any of the educational code and requirements that we have to abide by. And then for those those staff members who do become ill or do have to go into isolation or quarantine because of exposure, we're going to need substitute coverage for them as well. So that's going to be something that's going to be much more prevalent in the coming months for the personnel staff. Currently, hiring and benefits, I told you a little bit about how we're trying to manage the workload for our personnel staff, and that is that we are flying positions of the highest priority, and that would be right now just for the certificated position, so that we are fully staffed with teachers when students come back in the fall. And then as those get solidified and flown and hired for, then we will start the next wave. I've currently had conversations with the 105 union leadership on the potential need to have additional hiring in the personnel services office so that we can support them in the effort that they need to put forward across the district to attend to all of these things and make sure that our staff and the questions they have or the leaves that they need to go on, that they're handled efficiently and effectively, and then also to go through the contact tracing and the notifications of staff and students is going to be more daunting. So we want to make sure that they have plenty of resources to help them do that. In addition, we know that we have MOUs or memos of understanding with the union that we are going to need to go through and develop as we go through this COVID process and then upcoming negotiations. We have implemented digital software programs through this past year that will be coming online for the fall of 2020, and that is with Helios, and that's the workflow system. So that will require training and then also automate some of the processes through personnel, along with verification, along with the verification of employment paperwork, and then frontline for the time and attendance, and then getting those subs in and out and where they need to be in the most quick, efficient way possible. So that's going to be a heavier load for our personnel department. When we look at communications moving forward, I just want to thank again Hannah Getty, who has really championed our communication effort and made sure that the parent surveys have gone out, that we've compiled that information. The Superintendent TCUSD weekly updates of information have gone out to families to try to keep families and staff up to date with where we are, what we're doing, and then what's coming next. Site and weekly newsletters, and then also a monthly newsletter from my office with all pertinent and relevant information to keep our community abreast of what we're doing. We're looking at TCUSD employees and making sure that they have specialized information, again, through my newsletter and weekly updates, but also the professional development plans and schedules that they can sign up for so that it's as user-friendly as possible. And then various Board of Education presentations at all of our upcoming board meetings so that we just keep an update on what's going on as we go into school opening. Community partnerships, we talked about the facility use agreements. We've mailed letters home explaining the COVID situation to them, and then we will continue to keep them updated. We do know the value of our community partnerships and the groups that use our facilities. We regret that we are unable to open up our facilities at this time, but we will keep them up to date and in communication as to when we think that we will be able to reopen our facilities once we get to that point. PCC, we do have partnerships with PCC, and some of our students do attend courses or have coursework offerings through PCC, and we want to make sure that we are in communication with the leadership over there so that if our students do have classes that they are virtual, and we kind of guide and oversee that effort. So much care has gone into that. The childcare programs, as I mentioned before. And then on the school website and the TCUSD which will launch on July 6th. They will have updated COVID-19 information right on the main page. The video that you was shown earlier will be on and the LA County Department of Public Health, along with our detailed plans for reentry and the educational programs monumental task of opening schools. And I just listed them out in the same sort of categories that we have been talking about here before. Some of them have been presented at prior board meetings and already are approved. I just wanted to give you the comprehensive view of what our planning has entailed up to this point. Some of the personnel shifts, we have converted to digital systems. So with the conversion of some of our classified systems to a more digitized system, and then certainly on the certificated side with the learning management system and the online platform, there is a heavier demand on technology. We do have and will be recommending the kind of outbuilding of some of those technological resources by way of personnel. And again, we are working with both unions 823 and 105 to make sure that the technology services and support that we provide for our students and staff is paramount or is equivalent to what the demand will be. Human resources, that demand has also increased with the staff leaves, the notices, and the requirement for contact tracing and then substitute procurement. So we are also working with our union leaders to make sure that we are not overtaxing the very small human resource department that we have. We have, 3 wonderful employees in that area, and we want to make sure that we support them in the effort that is coming their way as well. With the curriculum demand that is increasing, we do know that some of our staff, by way of professional development that is more ongoing and systemic, it is going to be proposed, or projectedly it will be proposed, that an instructional coach or instructional support would be needed to meet the demand of that effort. I know that Ms. Getty is working with the technology committee currently to come up with a proposed plan that will be coming forward to the board at some period of time. So we want to make sure that we carve out funds in the budget to do that. And then with the adult transition program, again, transferring from Arcadia district to our district, we are going to need to provide classified and certificated staffing to house that program within our own district borders and make those adjustments. So partitions with regard to health and safety, we do know that anytime we have face-to-face contact, we have to add partitions so that those plexiglass stanchions like you'd see in businesses, we're going to have to put those in strategic areas across the district. We're identifying what those areas are currently so that, again, we can place orders as quickly as possible and get those protective shields in front of our staff to protect them as they go to work and in their workstations. We also are looking at signage across the district that is large and visible, and then we would have to, of course, have it in multiple languages. So we are currently developing that, and Ms. Getty is heading that effort and making sure that we're going to have signage that is posted in and around and within and through our campuses, all of our campuses, including the district office campus, to make sure that all of the guidelines are posted and the directional signs, ingress, egress, and the demarcations of workspaces, that they are all outlined across the campuses. Again, we're looking at thermal scanners and then a health screening software so that we can systems check on a daily basis, which is what the requirement is. Contact tracing, personal protective equipment, those things some of those things have been purchased already, the personal protective equipment, but that's going to be an ongoing need to provide, none of which is insignificant, and it's very significant to providing the protection and safety for individuals. And then in a past board meeting, we've approved the DIS or high-risk counselor that would be working with our specialized educational program, but also with our high school program. And that counselor would be responsible for really working with students with an elevated need, social emotional need. And we want to make sure that we are addressing, the students' social emotional health and supporting our counseling staff as well for the work that they do every single day. And then additional shade structures, you'll notice on the agenda tonight, additional shade structures. And I know that we got a question from this earlier, so I'm just gonna go ahead and answer. It's for all campuses. We've looked at all campuses to provide additional shade structure because again, we do have to provide meal service for the students who are on campus every day. And so we have to spread them out so that we meet that 6-foot guideline for social distancing. So we do want to make sure that students can eat lunch in a shaded area and still meet the social distancing requirement. And in addition, we may need in some cases to rotate classes outside or in outside areas in some certain situations like band or chorus, not so much band, but for some instruments, we want to make sure that they have that proper 6-foot radius. With chorus, when you're projecting your voice and projecting potential, droplets of fluid on the air, you do need an extended amount of space. And the public health department is recommending up to 10 feet distancing for some of those types of activities. Athletics may be able to practice or do some conditioning drills or PE classes underneath some shaded area so that our students are protected from the sun, and especially those with like adapted PE schedules or the specialized education PE schedules where the students may need a shade area to go under. So we're looking at those shade structures to enhance that for both food services and for classroom type activities. Moving forward, curriculum instruction, that learning management system we already approved on a past agenda, but I just included here so that you see kind of the total cost or layout of recommendations that we have already put forward. Professional development, this is for the summer, and then 2 years out, we will be looking at making sure that we procure good professional development for our staff and then help them build out the curriculum for those classrooms in the virtual digital environment. Instructional coaches and support, we anticipate that proposal coming for resources in terms of staff supporting staff, and that is I look forward actually to that proposal because I look forward to our highly qualified staff stepping into roles where they can actually be mentor and support to other staff members. I think when you have the talent from within your building and within your staff, that's always something we would want to capitalize on and make sure that we give opportunity to, especially to support the instructional components and staff who would need help or assistance, or even just to try out new technological ideas and have somebody to kind of route those ideas through with. So we're looking forward to that proposal coming forward. Tech support, I know I've talked before about building out some of our tech support in terms of network support, student data, and student information system support so that students will be rostered into the correct curriculum with the correct teacher. Teachers will be rostered correctly so that everyone could have access to the digital curriculum platform and software tools that they need to go into that digital or virtual environment. And then we would have a person too that would be able to triage and be a point of contact should you have any problems, glitches, or concerns with it, that they can help you and they can triage that quite quickly. And then site technicians on sites for students who are having difficulty with devices, that they can they can be on school sites, especially the large school sites like Oak or the high school or Longden Elementary, so that students, if they're having problems with their devices, they can get help very quickly, and or if staff is having problems with devices, that they can get immediate help very quickly. And then that adult transition. So making sure that we have that adult transition program moved, we procure a facility, a place for them to be, the materials and the equipment that they're also going to need to move that program from Arcadia back to Temple City. Finally, in some ways to do this, we know that the budget doesn't get bigger, especially in times like this, and we need to be fiscally solvent. And that is something that is a huge concern. I feel a tremendous obligation to support our staff, and I feel a tremendous obligation to support our students. And so I would never ask them to go without, and I would rather go without. And so we do have, in the last board meeting, an opportunity that came across our way. We did have a resignation that came through with Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services. I am recommending, or have recommended to the Board of Education, that I do not replace that person and that we go without that position being replaced. That is a very large amount of resources, financial resources, that we can redistribute to cover some of these areas that I've mentioned above, without adding to the budget. And so in order to make that happen, the roles, responsibilities, and the details of that don't go anywhere. Those roles and responsibilities still have to be covered. I think that we could move that down to the director level and have the directors cover some of those things. And then we could procure the remainder of those financial resources that would normally be spent on the assistant superintendent to positions in tech or human resources, or possibly the instructional coach support, some other area within the district where it wouldn't add to the budget. And so we would work within this amount to the greatest extent possible. Clearly, all of the things that I've outlined above are not going to fall within that salary benefit schedule, but we can cover some of those bases with that financial resource. So that is what we're looking at doing. And then Marianne Sorrell is going to be bulleting out that financial strategy plan in the July 22nd board meeting, when we do propose the eventual complete reopening plan, and both the fiscal accounting for some of these things that we need. Other things may surface from now until then through the task force and the work that we do there. But she will give you that strategy plan and the fiscal accounting for what it really is going to take to reopen schools. So at this time, I wanted to just briefly go through other components that are factoring in to the reopening of school. And one is, starting back in 18-19, when I came in the spring of 19, we did focus on inclusion and equity. We're going to continue to focus on inclusion and equity all the way through this 5-year cycle. Back then, we did do a needs assessment, and we've tried to address those needs by putting in specialized instruction and focusing on inclusion, by reviewing the budget and fiscal analysis, and by garnering stakeholder input and beginning that strategic plan along with the mission vision of the district. And then putting in those automated digital workflow systems so that it would take work off of our staff and support them. So you can see that in this time, that inclusion and equity is going to be something that we're very diligent on, and we want to address throughout even the COVID cycle and the COVID closure. And that is something that we will continue to focus on. So I just offer that as an overview. This is kind of like a guide to guide us through the 5 years. We have to address the COVID situation, but we can't forget about all the other things that we need to carry forward throughout the district. And then just final timeline. So Board of Education report on what we know now from the Department of Public Health guidelines. That's where we are. And then the Superintendent Task Force, again, is from July 6th through the 20th. Board of Education presentation on the opening of schools and the fiscal accounting, that's going to be July 22nd. Opening day, that's our target, and that's August 26th. And then we are going to revisit the COVID planning through the fall, and then make a different presentation in December, around December, so that we know how that's going to affect the next 6 months from January on through the close of school in June. So This is not a short road, it's a long road. I would be happy to answer any questions at this time that you may have, and then I can open it up to the board.
Hi, Dr. Fricker. It's Melissa.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you so much for that really comprehensive report on, what we're looking at in terms of school reopening. Just a couple of questions. So we talked about a 4-10 schedule with 2 cohorts. When they're on the 4 days, is it going to be a normal school day, like from 8 to 3 as we know it today, or is it going to be extended?
So we would have to abide by this model. There's so many guidelines that we had to kind of squeeze this model into, but we have to meet the contractual obligations. So we're not extending the school day hours. The school hours would be the same. We are not adjusting lunch schedules. We've worked with food service so that we think we can fit it in. Of course, we haven't trial tested that yet, but the plan is that they would 6-foot distance through the lunch lines, and we would put up additional barriers and protective mechanisms for them to come and get their lunch. Many things would have to be prepackaged, but that is the guidelines that we are being given anyway. So, so I think we can fit everything within the contractual obligations that we have to abide by, and so that it's the same structure for parents. So it's not this massive shift for staff or for our parent community.
And then the 10 days virtual, is that 10 school days or calendar days where a student would be off campus?
It would be calendar days. So
the calendar, okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And then one other thing is I was reading on the CSBA, one of the updates that was provided about the California Department of Public Health providing some PPE equipment for school districts, and that it's going to be, things like no-touch thermometers and things like that, face masks, those types of things, and that it would be distributed through the County Office of Education. I understood it to be kind of a short-term supply for most districts. Have they talked about, the ease at which a district can start applying to get that stuff on time for school opening?
Yeah, we've already started applying for everything that we possibly can with regard to protective equipment, thermometers, that kind of thing, because they would be used in our health offices, and they would be used either for students and or for staff. And again, certain criteria that's where staff has to interact in a closer range than 6 foot, they need more protective equipment, like a gown or a face actual shield and mask and covering for like the nurses station. So we will specify out per classification what that PPE really is for that group. And then either we'll get a certain quantity, we're not going to get our total needed quantity, but we're going to get a certain quantity from those agencies, and then whatever we need in addition to, I know that we've been ordering that equipment, and then we will continue to order as supplies dwindle. We normally try to order in a 3-month block, which is more than we would normally typically order, but because when you get it, you get it, and then sometimes we experience delays in getting shipments or access to equipment. So we do try to build out a 3-month window so that we never go without.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
I also would like to thank the superintendent for the presentation she just gave. And I think we should have a couple of minutes silence while she takes a couple of deep breaths so that she can be recovering from speaking for almost an hour and a half. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, maybe water.
I'm just wondering, this is Monday, so I could just try to empathize. You must have spent, what, Saturday, Sunday? Do you even have a weekend?
No. Well, I don't know what a weekend is anymore, so that's okay.
It's been a total blur, right? Every day is pretty much the same. It's work.
Yeah, I don't think most of the nation doesn't know what day it is. Like, I think we've all forgot.
I just want to, wow, I mean,
But
this
thank you.
so comprehensive. I'm blown away with the details. I love the graphics. I don't know if you did your own graphics.
I did. Well, I got a template. I got some help.
That's pretty cool. So the 410, I saw that video about a month and a half ago, and when I saw it again today, I thought, oh, Kim, you have that science background. This is so awesome, And I mapped it out, and it kind of 4 doesn't work with school for education in general, because we go with the 5-day schedule.
Right.
So one of the scientists said it's 40% because it's 4 divided by 10.
Right.
Today when I looked at it, I'm like, no, that's not 40%, which is not an issue. It's really 29% because we're really doing 4 divided by 14. Right, as opposed to 4 divided by 10. But he said it twice, like 4 out of 10. But that's not to, the idea is solid. The idea is really good. So there are multiple ways of looking at A/B scheduling.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like this what you shared about the A schedule will be coming in for 4 days,
Mm-hmm.
and 10 days, or maybe doing a 5-9 kind of scenario, because the 5-9 works perfectly according to the 5 days of school. And then you have 2 weekends added together to the 5 days, that's 9 days, right? The 5-9 works really well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my second iteration. I was doing this on the spreadsheet. And the idea is you have 5 days for A, 9 days off, let's say that's the case. And then B starts on a Monday the following week, and then 9 days off, right? And that would keep the R0 down to less than 1. R0 is the reproduction rate of the virus.
And less than 1 is optimal, yes.
Right, less than 1, over 1 is exponential. See, I'm talking to a scientist. I know you have a science background. That's awesome. So my question is, we do have siblings. Anywhere from 20% to 25% of our student population have siblings. And so parents who need custodial care, they would need to synchronize those A/B, articulated up to the grade levels. And so the schools will have to coordinate something like this. One possible solution, actually, no, I shouldn't even share that solution. So that's one of those concerns, or those items that will really help our 20% of our families, or 25% of our families. Okay, I'll share the idea. One of the ideas is if we split it by last name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the group is up to letter K, B group K and after. Then you're not going to deal with the sibling issues. You actually accommodate parents. But I don't want to share that initially, because I want, I don't want to get into the weeds. I want to define the what's, not the hows.
Listen, we will take any suggestion, because we're gonna run through that and many more before we finalize whatever we're gonna do. So who knows if that's the suggestion that's actually gonna be the one that works. So I'll take it.
Right. So another A/B scenario, which is, I would say, not as superior as the one you shared, is you're doing Wednesday, Thursday A, Tuesday, Friday B. Wednesday's cleaning day, right? That only has 1 day. I mean, plastic surfaces, this virus could survive 2 to 3 days sometimes, right? So having Wednesday off really is not long enough. Or having Saturday, Sunday off, the virus is still going to survive on some surfaces. So but I'm going to get to the second point, which is this upcoming legislation, AB 77, that pretty much says, it talks about school funding, school finance.
Mm-hmm.
AB 77, my understanding in reading it is that we have to offer, in addition to just distance education only, we have to offer some sort of a on-campus education as an option. Right. So that's given, but we do have families. We don't have the survey results yet, but we do have families who would hesitate sending students to school at all.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to look at this AB schedule, which is the on-campus option, right? Those 9 or 10 days off, not off, but virtual. Are they going to be synchronized with the families that only opt for online distance education, virtual education? So the question really is, let's say you have anywhere from 20 to 30% of the families who do not want to risk their kids' health. They do not want the on-campus, or they have somebody at home who is at a high risk, group, that they don't want the asymptomatic child to come home and get, the family members infected. And they want to keep their kids home, but they also want virtual education, only virtual, 100% virtual. That schedule will look very different from the AB schedule, because the on-campus schedule will require some sort of drop-off staggering. We don't want to have, 300 kids, right? Half of the population be dropped off simultaneously. So grade levels may be staggered, 15 minutes in terms of drop-off. Pickup will be staggered because you don't want all dismissal to be done simultaneously. Lunch schedule will be staggered. So that will inform how the AB schedule on campus will look like. But for the kids who are 20, 30% opting to stay home, their schedule doesn't need to be staggered, right?
Right.
Their schedules will have a more academic focus in terms of, okay, I want a block of language arts, I want a block of math across the board, as opposed to, okay, let's stagger it based on, drop-off schedule, recess schedule, anything that's, on-campus related scheduling. So the question is, are we offering parents the option of a online, completely online option, or we're going to say they have to go with this AB schedule, the 410 AB schedule?
So two things, and we'll get to that one in a second. The first thing is that the Friday being off, we are working with our M&O and our custodial teams to go in and do that deep sanitizing to the campuses, so that if a virus does live for 3 days on a surface, we have those 3 days to neutralize, kill, disinfect, sanitize those surfaces. And so the science behind it actually, in many, many ways, only for disease spread, but also for sanitation, it gives us the optimal amount of range to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep those campuses as safe and sanitized as humanly possible. So I just wanted to mention that, because I didn't mention that earlier, but that is on that Friday day. And then for the families, there are going to be situations with families who the students themselves are medically fragile, and they are going to, or they live with a member of their family who's medically fragile. And so there are going to be situations where students absolutely will have to stay in that virtual environment. And so, yes, we are giving families the option to doing that. And then likewise, like there are going to be families who say, I have to go to work. And my child's not old enough to be at home without a supervisor, without someone who can, provide custodial care. So that's where the childcare program would come into place. And so for those families, those students who need to be on a safe, secure campus, but not on the school campus, for that time, we are trying to provide solution for them as well. So I'm sure there's going to be scenarios that we have not thought about, or there's going to be a student or a family or a situation that we're going to have to just, really problem solve and triage. But for those two groups, those who need 100%, like we need custodial care 100% of the time, or we want to be completely virtual at home 100% of the time, we're going to have to accommodate both of those scenarios.
So parents will have a choice. Are we surveying the parents, or are we going to just say you're going to commit to this for one semester or one?
We are surveying the parents, and the surveys have gotten more specific in terms of like, what were your concerns with it, to now what educational program are you leaning to, so that we can build our plan around that. And so we will be asking our families to make a definitive decision to be in one of those three main groups, the 410, and I can have my students at home and it's not going to be a big deal for me. No, I need 100%, I need that custodial care portion, or no, we're going to be 100% at home. So we are going to hone in on our families and adjust our educational program around what those needs are for their specific family. So we'll continue to survey them.
Would that introduce a a factor in the MOU with TCEA with regards to some teachers only doing distance education, whereas other teachers may be doing the hybrid blended AD model.
And so that would really depend on that task force coming together and those teacher leaders that are on that task force. I know that they were selected by TCEA, and I trust their selection. So we do have educators coming together to round out the practicalities of that. So in some cases, you know, staff probably at the upper end say, you could be in class or virtual, and I have my learning management system. Everyone has access. You can just tune in to my lectures, my classes, my whatever, and you can have synchronous and asynchronous, you know, instruction. And there isn't a need to have it be in a different, be with a different educator. That may not be applicable to all grade levels or grade ranges. So we're just going to have to work with those staff members and TCEA and develop the plan that fits our district. And so I'm really excited to start that work next week with them and dive into that component. I think once we have the general premise of what we're working with, we kind of give them the platform, and now we have to build all of those components on top of it and make that all work. Once we decide on what that looks like, then absolutely we can work with TCA and the MOUs that will result from that work. But I couldn't say specifically because the grade levels, as you know, are very, very different. Even within the elementary realm, the ability and the program needs to be tailored for that primary level versus the upper elementary, and then intermediate and high school will be addressed by the contributing members of TCEA from those two areas too. So
I asked about this also because one of the slides mentioned that teachers who may be on leave because they have a medical or they're more susceptible to COVID. Is that you know, if they don't want to be on leave and they do want to work, and if they can be doing online, that could be, you know,
a solution.
A solution. The other thing I heard was having teachers stream from their classrooms. That could create an issue, because I've never seen a camera in a classroom before. Yeah, that could be a precedence that I'm not sure all teachers want to set in Temple City. So it does have to involve our teachers to a large degree.
Yeah, and we're gonna. I trust them as professionals. I have through this process and really the guidance that they provide us from that practical standpoint of what can feasibly work for this grade level or group of students or, you know, department or it would even, you know, if you even think of it from like the arts to like a core subject area, it's going to be different. And I'm excited to take their lead on what's going to work and how it's going to work and how practically we're going to apply it. And unfortunately, that's the job I can't do for them. They're the ones in the classrooms. They're the ones with the students. However we can structure it for them, however we can support them, that is my quest. That's the job that I want to do, is making sure that whatever supports we can provide, I think about what those are. I try to plan for what those are. I take leadership from those people saying and suggesting this is what we need. And then I try to find a way to make it work for them. So I really am looking forward to the leadership that they're going to bring in those areas. And they know the students and the grade ranges and the needs better than I would. Like I was a science teacher, like I wouldn't know how to conduct band or orchestra from a virtual environment, but some people do it brilliantly, you know, so it's just really interesting. And it's beautiful to see what they will come up with and how innovative they are at handling, you know, and triaging some of these hurdles and obstacles that we have to overcome. So I really look forward to that work. And I trust that if they say, listen, we need this to support us in these areas, I trust that. So we're going to do everything that we can to support them in those areas and make everything on the back end work so that they on the front end can shine. And I think that's our goal. So, but we'll be giving you updates as to what that community work looks like.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
If I may, I'd just like to throw in some brief comments here. Over the course of the last 2 board meetings during the board comments, I've tried to convey to the public, people who aren't as involved, just the volume of information that has been coming out from all the different resources. Tremendous volume, sometimes conflicting, sometimes, like I said last week, a step forward and 2 steps backwards. But I just really have to tip my hat off to you, Kim, and your cabinet for the fabulous job you've done and been in putting together this first draft of school reopening, and how nicely it's come together. And I'm actually a little bit excited to see how it works. And I think there's going to be some prizes all around. So just thank you very much, you and the cabinet and everybody else has been involved. Great job.
Thank you.
I second Mr. Smith's comments.
Thank you, Ken. We have a long way to go. We have a short time to do it. I have to tell you that I'm excited to see what we come up with and what we actually do, and the quality with which we do it, and the care that really goes into it to ensuring that our students get what they need and that our staff gets the support that they need to do that daily instruction with our kids. And so I think there's no mountain that's too high to climb. There's always an answer somewhere. Sometimes you just have to keep looking until you find it. But that's what we'll do. That's what we'll continue to do. Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much, Kim, for that very thorough report.
Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. All right. We'll move on then to item number 8, which is approved purchase of shade structures. And do we have a staff report on that?
That would be. Thank you.
Good evening. Tonight we are bringing forward a plan for your approval, and this would be for adding shade structures across the district to add additional shade, which family and community have been very interested in for several years, and also to help support the additional needs we have during COVID to provide other alternative learning spaces and other spaces for students to eat their lunch and be out of the shade, or out of the sun rather. This can be paid from Measure S funds. The company that we're working with has DSA pre-approval. And what that means is instead of going through the 3 to 6 month approval process, their product has already been approved. There is still a DSA desk check, but it's much, much shorter. And this evening, Laura Franson is joining us, and she's from USA Shade, and we're gonna bring up the PowerPoint. There was a question earlier in the meeting about whether or not the Learning Center would need shade structures. So we have examples of shade structures, but they could be installed physically at the high school to give shade to those students. So let me bring the presentation up. And Laura, are you with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great.
Okay. Can everyone see the shared presentation?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet.
Okay, let's see what's wrong.
Marianne, let me know. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. Is it still a no?
Yes.
Still a no.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Monica, can you pop it up for me?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Thank you.
Here we come. There
Okay,
you go.
do you guys see it?
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Well, I think I'll take it from here. So we're USA Shade and Fabric Structures. We do a lot of DSA pre-approved, projects. A lot of the districts, LAUSD and many others. And what you're looking at is I walked all the campuses with Tony, And we looked at areas that he wanted to provide shade and structures that he thought would fit based on the pre-approved structures that are available. And so I just basically kind of, just for a visual, kind of dropped it down. I hope I have the right areas because I'm not as familiar as Tony is of what we were looking at for the various areas. And for Emperor School, they were looking at area 1, which is the 50 by 18 foot lunch hip. That would be 2 joined structures. It would be primarily out there for the children to have lunch. He was looking at area 2, which was a 14-foot cantilever, which a cantilever is on 1 column only. So the advantage to that in a tight area is that we only have to deal with 1 column. It's less cumbersome, you know, provides a lot more area. So in that particular area, that was something he was thinking would fit. A 16 by 34 foot, again, joined hip, quite a large area for another lunch area. And if you calculate the square footage of these, if you're doing a 69 by 34, you're looking at 2,300 square feet. So if you have to set tables out or you have to space children out by 6 feet, there's plenty of room to do that. And we frequently do these types of shelters in schools. And then the other one we were looking at was basically another, it's a 50 by 20 cantilever. And a cantilever is, again, when we do a long one like that, it's 2 columns and they're joined. And where we had it, it's to an advantage because you only have columns on one side. So we did a lot of these throughout your campuses on these particular schools. All DSA approved. DSA now, because of the emergency situation, generally what happens is it's about a month to get a DSA appointment for an architect. They've waived that. As long as the architect is fine with putting the structures and he knows they're going to pass DSA, we can go ahead and start manufacturing the structures. And the architect can do it within 3 months after it's even installed, as long as it's DSA is informed 15 days after we've installed it. So that can speed it up somewhat, but that's really depends on the architect and how he feels about each campus, depending on what you're doing. Do you want to go to the next slide, please?
Is that the next one?
Yes. So this is when we're talking about, this is a full single hip joint. And when we went through a lot of your campuses, because some of them are in tighter areas where he wanted there not to impede with the pole on the, 4 columns or 6 columns, we're doing it where it's just on the one side and it's a cantilever down. So these cantilevers can be joined and they can project out 20 foot. So it provides a significant amount of coverage. And you'll see that when we went through the campuses, he has a lot of them are outside the buildings. And he, wanted these types of shade structures so that it's not as obtrusive. It's just an option. We can also do a 4 6 post column if need be. Next slide, please. The Oak Intermediate, just a big lunch quad. The biggest we can do is a 60 by 60. This is an example of what a 60 by 60 quad would look like. We can do them in multiple layers. A lot of people do that. I mean, it's a huge amount of room if you're going to have people out there. It does have a lot of visual interest to the school. So rather than just have something that's out there and sort of just plop there, it's a focal point as well. So it does upgrade the school somewhat. And that's what we projected in that huge area. Next slide. Okay, so this is basically one that we have installed in a school already, and that's from a side view of kind of what it looks like. We can also do this in a solid fabric versus the layers. It's still the same amount of shade coverage. It's just the layers. Sometimes schools like to do their colors, or they want the visual interest or the upgraded look type thing. So that's just basically an example of one that's already installed. Next slide, please. So on Temple City High School, this is where we get into the single full cantilevers, the ones that have the columns only on one side. And if you look over on the 84 by 20 and the 75 by 20, he wanted it in those areas. I just dropped them down. Those are projecting out 20 foot, but they're only going to have columns on one side, which Tony thought would be a lot less cumbersome than having columns in the middle of the sidewalk. We can still do that, but that was just an option that we thought might work best for this situation. And then on the circular area, there's a round area at Temple High School, which he said is not really used, just kind of up on the concrete. And we do have a hexagon structure that we could put on that. I am projecting, I'm thinking 40 foot. It actually measures 45, but I don't think that would really work out. It would be up to our construction manager, but I think that would be an option for that particular area, which would cover that whole round area. Next slide, please. Oops. Okay, so you've seen this, that's the full single cantilever again. That's just one that's not connected onto another. And then that's a hexagon that we actually installed at a school in West Covina about a month and a half ago. Just another side view so you can see what the structure looks like. And again, those can go anywhere from 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 60 feet. For that particular area, you know, we don't have that much room, but we definitely could put a 40-foot one in. And the next slide, please. So this is the Dr. Doug Sears Learning Center, and I'm sure I have those in the wrong place, but at that particular one, we were just talking about putting some single post cantilevers out there. Per DSA, you can only do 40 foot. We typically do a lot of these in childcare centers or kindergarten areas. It provides a lot of shade and it's only one column. So, you know, there's not a lot to bump into for kids running around. And if you've got a tight area, that's, you know, it's easy to fit one in. So we proposed 2 at that area, somewhere in the vicinity of where I put, you know, drop those down on. And the next slide, please. So basically, those are what the single post cantilevers look like. Again, with DSA, we can only install 14 by 14. That's pre-approved, but they do provide a tremendous amount of shade. And that column is flexible. We can put it, you know, on the corner, anywhere we need to put it so it's out of the way for the kids. Next slide, please. So Longden Elementary, again, we've got that blacktop area where we're going to do canties. So all the columns would be placed in the grass and they would be cantilevering out, not being placed in the blacktop, which would leave it all open and a significant amount of coverage. The kinder area, we wanted to put something in there on that one area. And the only thing that's really going to fit is a triangle, but it's a 25 by 25 by 25 triangle. So it would fit perfectly in there. That would cover that. He wanted a kinder area single post canty, which is again, just 14 foot. Next slide. So basically those are just a picture of what the joined canties look like, and we can continue to join those down if need be. And a triangle simply, you know, the same type of design, only you're, you know, because of area being hard to fit, you're eliminating a column. So next slide, please. So La Rosa, I had met with Jason La Rosa, about a month ago about covering the play structures. So I did quote uncovering the play structures. You can see where the red lines were, you know, they have them. But I think for your purposes, Tony said we were looking for, again, the lunch area. So the lunch area was just a single hip. It's just, you know, the 6 post, rather large. And I believe the dimension, I can't believe I didn't put it on there. It's like a 30 by 50. So it would provide, and it's in the center there. The other ones were just over the play structures. You know, I put them on there because the principal had asked for them. So next structure.
I think that's it.
And basically that just kind of shows you how it would be broken up over play structures theoretically, and then how the joined ones are on the hip per DSA. And the next slide, please. And that's just, again, some other pictures of how it would be broken out theoretically and overplay structures, which we do a lot of, if indeed you wish to do that. And the next slide, please. So Cloverly, again, Cloverly is, we went to that school, and in the front part, the reading gardening, I believe it's called, or room, we can do either or. We could do a 20 by 20 hip, or DSA does have approved a 20-foot single post pyramid. What that is actually a column in the middle. It's like a huge umbrella, you know, with a column in the middle. So for that particular area, which is kind of small, either of those structures would work. So, then on the sides, you see where the full single cantilevers, again, those are the cantilevers where the columns would be up against the building and it would be open. Or if the architect prefers the columns on the other side, it's just you're having columns on one side, and those are all three down. And in the lunch area is a joined hip. Again, that's 6 columns, and we just joined them for a 48 by 40 footprint that we thought would fit in there. And the next slide, please. Oops. So basically, yeah, that's just, unlike the cantilever, again, if they were going to do a single post pyramid, it's just in the middle, and it's, you know, 20 foot, significant, but it's like a giant umbrella. And the next slide, please. So basically, this is color shade fabric. It's DSA approved, fire marshal approved, it won't burn. The advantage of it is the kids do get the UV protection. It's inexpensive. It doesn't have to be replaced for about 15 years, and you know, it is really inexpensive. The best thing about it is it does increase the airflow, so it's never like air is contained, and it also reduces the temperature 20 to 30 degrees. So it's very comfortable being underneath it. And the next slide. So a lot of times people ask me about waterproof fabric or waterproof shade structures. Anytime you get a steel structure or any kind of waterproof fabric, it is waterproof, but then what happens is you don't have air circulation. So while you do get the shade, it does get hot. The fabric that we have, the color shade fabric, does have a water runoff table, which I think I've sent into Marianne. But it will, when it does rain, it will not come pouring through. It will trickle through like being under heavy trees, unless it's like, you know, pouring cats and dogs. The waterproof fabric, we can definitely quote if you wish to have waterproof fabric. The only problem is it's not DSA pre-approved. Whenever you put waterproof fabric in, it's considered custom. And a custom structure can take a year or more to get approved through DSA, and it's extremely expensive. It increases the cost, and it really doesn't, I think in the long run, it really doesn't circulate the air as well. If you've ever been up under one of those pop-up tents like at Home Depot or something that they have now, where it's waterproof and it's like vinyl, it can get quite hot and quite stuffy. So just a little bit of the differences, because I know sometimes people are concerned, but you're still going to have protection from the rain unless it's extremely pouring. And the next slide. So basically, we're going to quote off the Fullerton Joint Unified School piggyback bid. We've sent the piggyback over to corporate. The final sizes, what we usually do if you decide to move forward and you decide what structures you want or what areas you want to cover, we'll have our construction manager go out with Tony again. Usually the architect gets involved at this point, and we'll just validate that everything fits as it needs to fit in the area. A lot of times we like to get the architect's approval too, because he's the one that has to take it to DSA. He knows the requirements of the building. I know you've had a lot of modernization, so it shouldn't be an issue, but we coordinate all of that just to make sure everything is perfect before you decide which ones, and then before they go to DSA. And the next slide. Basically, just everything is standard color shade. It's a mesh fabric, standard powder coat. Everything's inclusive except for anything that you pay to the architect and the Fullerton Joint Unified. And the next slide. Oops. Think the other way. And the next slide. So we do all the on-site review with our construction manager. We coordinate everything with the architects. We have a project manager that runs the entire project. So, you know, it takes it off. Basically, we run everything coordinated with the designated, probably with Tony more than likely, and the architect. So it's all a coordinated effort and really not, we do the best to minimize any kind of impact in the school schedule. Obviously, when we have to install, it's a 2-week process. So what happens is our construction manager will coordinate. We provide all fencing. We come in week 1, usually week 1's the footings. The inspector inspects the footings. In the second week, we put the structure in. So it's a 2-week install process. And next slide, please. These are the only approved color choices from DSA. So you're not getting any custom. This is basically what they approve. You can have any colors, and if you choose or if you do decide you want some fancier structure like the one we saw with the multiple, fabrics overlapping each other, you can mix and match however you want. So, that's up to you. And next slide, I think that's it. Are there any questions?
What about warranty and
Warranty?
Yeah.
Okay, so the warranty, we guarantee all our work. Obviously the shade structure, the steel, all our installers are ours. We don't outsource anything, so that's all we do. The fabric warranty by the manufacturer is 10 years. We recommend replacements usually around 15 years. Just so you know, the fabric is rated at 115 miles per hour. So it's not going to be whipping off in the wind. It's not going anywhere. If anything does happen, there's any kind of fraying, any kind of holes, anything happens within 10 years, we'll replace that at no charge, unless it's vandalism or something, obviously. But yeah, and the fabric is minimal. So most schools don't have to replace. I have schools in high wind areas that are just now replacing it at 15 years, which is amazing because they're in some really harsh conditions.
And when you say the fabric is minimal, you're talking about cost?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if you're worrying about, down the line, 15 years from now, you have to replace the top, the fabric is very inexpensive. The upfront cost is basically DSA, the engineering, the calculations, steel, and the installation. So it's not a huge expense.
And then
Okay, before we get too much further into this, can we get a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by member Smith. Is there a second?
Second by Lynn.
Is that Mike?
Yep, Mike.
Okay. Okay, second by member Lynn. Okay, now we can get into the questions and comments.
I just have one more question on the packet that we received. The very last page is a letter from CAL FIRE talking about the product. And down in the bottom right-hand corner, it says expire 6/30/2020, which is tomorrow. Is that?
Yeah, sorry, I sent you the wrong one. We definitely have it up to date. Don't worry, I'll send you the correct one.
Okay.
That's my fault. No, it's all with the state of California and particularly DSA, everything has to be approved by the state fire marshal. So it is all approved. It has to meet, DSA standards. And we've also worked, I believe you are, if I'm not mistaken, your choice of architect is LPA. So we've worked with them in the past, so it should be pretty seamless.
Laura? Kim presented the timeline earlier. What is the timeline on, let's say, if the board would approve, what does the timeline look like?
So the timeline, first thing we would do is schedule up a meeting just to make sure everything that Tony and I presented is indeed doable for our construction team. Because, you know, it's one thing to, you know, say you can do it. It's another, he's got to make sure he sees any kind of obstacles. I don't think we're going to have anything that's going to be pertinent. The only thing I thought might be questionable was the hexagon, only because we have to fit it because there's entryways and whatnot. So we get that done and we solidify it, send over to contract. Once you agree with the contract and the project manager, we start sending the DSA drawings over to the architect. The architect will either, he's going to either make an appointment with DSA, which is about a 30-day wait at this point, or B, he's going to take advantage of what DSA has right now, where we can just kind of go in, put it in, and he can go in later as long as we notified him. But that's going to kind of be up to the architect. And I think he'll base that on, he knows, you know, if he's going to, they know, because DSA is going to look at the site plan, path of travel, ADA upgrades. But if you've had modernization, then that shouldn't be an issue. So that'll be really up to him. Once we have DSA approval, we immediately release it for production. It takes 6 to 8 weeks for production. It comes into our office and it's a 2-week install from there. So on our end, you're looking at about, just for production and installation, from the time we order it to the time it's in the ground, probably about 10 to 12 weeks.
Okay, are there other questions?
Laura, there was one more from the same community member.
From Jerry, I was gonna ask that.
Okay, and
well, actually, I think that's a question for Monica. I mean, for Mary Ann.
Well, the question that came in was that you said it should last 15 years. And he said, for example, if you take a shade structure that was $40,000, how much would it cost to replace the cover only?
I can't answer that question because it all goes depending on the size and what the fabric is. I mean, that would be hard. It'd be like saying how, without knowing what the structure is, it would be really difficult. How high it is, does it require special equipment? So, but it's literally probably, I would say 1 or 2% cost of the whole structure on average. It's not the major, you know, the major thing of what you're paying for up front. But I wouldn't worry about it because, again, you know, it's not, these aren't structures that are going to be flimsy by any means. It's going to be there for a long time.
I thought Jerry had asked why we were getting shade shelters for the Learning Center when they're going to be moving to the high school and we're going to have a preschool there. I thought that was his question.
He did, but he just submitted another question.
Oh, okay. Well, his first question, could we get that one answered?
Sure. So the structures that are shown in these representations of shade that's showing in the Doug Sears Learning Center would actually physically be at the high school in their new area to provide shade for the new Learning Center area.
Okay, so there really aren't any proposed for the old Learning Center area.
Not at this time. We're still working on the plans for that that location.
Because I thought that's what the drawing was, but I could be wrong about that.
No,
Okay.
it absolutely was the drawing that's in there. Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I guess my other question is too, I only heard mention of one principal having any input on this. When do the other principals get the opportunity to give input?
I did meet several principals when I was on campus with Tony, but unfortunately I was doing so much I don't remember all the ones.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't expect you to, but
yeah, I do apologize, but I can't say they were very excited because I didn't really see, I didn't see a lot of shade structures on your campuses.
yeah. No, I guess this question is more for Mary Ann because I've seen it happen many a times where someone makes a decision about something and the people that have the practical experience and know the day-to-day operations didn't give input on it, and it turns out to not be the best use of the funding. So that's why I'm concerned that the principals haven't had an opportunity to give input on this.
Well, so there was only one principal that wasn't able to be there the day they were walking. So if the board would choose to approve this plan, then we would absolutely make a second with all the principals to make sure there hasn't been a change of thinking or they have changed their mind of placement, and we would do that as quickly as we could based on their schedules. But only one principal was unavailable.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. All right, are there any more questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one more question. I'm gonna most likely hear it from a neighbor or a constituent. Why not just pop up, easy ups? Why something more permanent?
Because easy ups are, first of all, it's a waste of money. It's not going to stay. And these are going to be permanent in the ground, stay and provide. I mean, it's basically a structure. It's going to lower the temperature. That's going to be a big plus. Provides UV shade. A lot of wonderful things in shade structures.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just one general one. After 15 years, does the cloth have a different color than it was when original?
With everything, with the exception of red, I would highly not recommend red. For some reason, that seems to fade in the sun quite a lot. They do get a little lighter over time because you can't, it's the sun. The sun's going to break it. So the material has a warranty from the vendor for 10 years. Usually it's a 10 to 15, you have to replace it. And generally that's just from wear and tear. But I would say stay away from the red. And I would also suggest, it's been my experience if you're going to various campuses before we actually put them in the ground, when we get the go ahead to move forward and we schedule up with Tony and we bring our construction manager out to verify that everything is going to work as best that we can tell. Yeah, we can't see unforeseen things like if we hit, some big rock or something, but make sure we've got path of travel, free of utilities and all that kind of stuff. What I would suggest at that time is to notify the principal so that he could be there when we're walking on campus. And then we actually lay out with cones and measure it out so he could see the actual outline of where we're putting the structure. And that's a great visual because when you're laying it out with cones and they can actually see where it's going, then if anybody has concerns about the use of that area, then we can easily address maybe doing a different structure or moving to a different area that would be better used or serviced by it.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Member Smith? Member Smith?
Sorry about that. I wouldn't unmute. Anyway, yes. Absolutely.
Okay, Member Espinosa?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much. Our next item is item 9. It's approve a new course adoption at Oak Avenue Intermediate School. And Hannah, we had a presentation at our last meeting last week, but did you want to give us a little brief overview of it?
Absolutely. Sorry. Ready. Okay. Just to recap what Mr. Slaymaker and Ms. Katsuyama had presented to us, we are looking to adopt the Intro to Algebra course at Oak just this year. But in the adoption process, it would allow the course to be used at the high school, which is their plan in the future. And the purpose for this would really just be to sort of streamline our pathways for our students. So in an Intro to Algebra course in intermediate level, students are able to gain those fundamental skills for algebra. So when they get to the high school, they can be successful in Algebra 1. It's very, I don't know, typical, very expected that you take Algebra 1 your freshman year. That's fine. You know, there is an advanced track where you can take higher level math, but if you were to take Algebra 1 your freshman year in high school, you're right on track to get what we would call our A through G approval so that you can be, you know, ready for a four-year university. So with that intro to algebra at Oak in the intermediate level, you then get to the high school level and you can be very successful in your Algebra 1 course, go on and take geometry, Algebra 2, and even get to a pre-calculus if you so choose. And what they're asking to do by adopting it there at Oak, and then again, opening up the course adoption, which would be for the whole district, so the high school would then probably use it in the next year, would be to just give students a path that best suits them for, you know, that's more applicable for their math desires, whatever it may be. We want to also open up, this would allow us to then open up our advanced math options so that students can streamline those and eventually bring the advanced sciences with that. So they're following a pathway of advanced math and science all the way through. And then the students that are on track for a four-year university can follow those pathways. And then we can also make sure that we have the interventions in place for students that struggle with math and make sure that we're bringing everybody up to speed, because everybody has to get through Algebra 1 to get out of high school. And that's really our goal, is to make sure that we're not having students spend 4 years in Algebra 1. We want to avoid what has been sort of past practice just because of what we are able to offer our students.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
I'll motion.
Motion by member Espinosa,
Second.
second by member Lynn. Okay, are there any questions or comments? All right, we'll go ahead and take, yes, was there a question? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote on this. Member Espinosa,
Yes.
member Lynn.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg
Yes.
and member Smith.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 5-0. Next, we'll move on to item 10, which is approval for funds for contact tracing systems. And Dr. Makovich, are you going to give us a little presentation on this?
Yes, I am. Can everybody see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to talk to about returning back to work, back to school, making sure we ensure safety. And one of the ways to do that is through contact tracing. Let me explain the what and the why of the contact tracing program. Currently, personnel is tracking all COVID leaves, all COVID illnesses, making sure that we help all of our staff make sure that they have the information that they need. This system provides an online system of being able to track that. So let me explain what it is. A contact tracing software program and system is needed to effectively identify, notify, and track students and employees who have contracted COVID-19, may have been exposed to it, or to someone who has contracted, or maybe be we're just trying to cut down on exposure. It's designed to provide early identification or to guide others in the need to self-isolate or go into quarantine in order to prevent further exposure. Currently, we've had one case where a staff member was on site with other staff members. A critical component is time. It took us about 48 hours to identify the contact area and who that person had been in contact with. This will cut down so we can cut down on exposure and get those people into self-isolation or quarantine if needed. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention hasn't mandated this, but it is recommended that we use a contact tracing system because it reports that anyone who comes into close contact who has COVID-19 is at an increased risk of becoming infected or potentially infecting others. Close contact is defined as contact that is less than 6 feet apart when wearing a mask or not wearing a mask for longer than 15 minutes. And as you know, when we're dealing with children, we know we have the 6 foot rule, but kids are kids. So, that may, that's something that we're going to have to be vigilant about, but it will happen. Contact tracing can help prevent further transmission of the virus by quickly identifying and informing people that someone in their school or vicinity may have been affected or been exposed to someone who has the virus. And the CDC has given us research that just having an effective system of contact tracing greatly reduces the spread of the virus. How does it exactly work? Contact tracing begins with identifying every person who has recently tested positive or has been officially diagnosed with COVID-19. Basically, the system asks people a brief questionnaire on any symptoms that they may have. And then in the case of COVID-19, a person may be contagious 48 to 72 hours before they start experiencing symptoms. So the person can seem well, go to school or go to class or go to work and actually have the virus. The identified individuals or contacts are notified regarding of their potential exposure. And then we will be able to provide communication, what to do next steps. So we stop the spread of the virus and get the person the medical attention that they need. An important first step of contact tracing is symptom checking. It identifies possible individual exposure on group hotspots. Following up on those results is critical, making sure that the person who may have the virus or exposed gets the medical help that they need, and that the people who were in contact with the student or staff member are notified to either self-isolate or quarantine. We encourage and enable high-risk individuals or those who test positive confidentially share who they've been in contact with and the places they've been. And it helps build trust and take real measures to ensure safety and for students and staff, because it provides a quick turnaround time. There is no lag. There is no 48 to 72 hours where people are not being notified. How to effectively provide contact tracing. Providing a digital platform that can perform the following quickly and assess and a confidentiality, assess symptoms, automatically notify those impacted with next steps, provide daily notifications to monitor symptoms, aggregate data to identify trends and hotspots, and provide ongoing communication for staff, students, and families. And the digital platform also does provide translations for all those communications in Mandarin and in Spanish. Possible vendor. Qualtrics is one possible vendor. I have to tell you, I've spent weeks looking for a vendor that serves both students and staff. Qualtrics is being used by LACO right now to be a possible source of contract tracing, because it does provide students and for tracing for students and employees. There are plenty of vendors that just do it for employees, but not both. So it's a possible vendor. Still looking, haven't been able to find one, but this is one. The cost of the program is roughly, no matter which one you look at, does not exceed $25,000. And I broke down the cost. The system tracker solution for about 570 staff is a little under six grand. For under 6,000 students, it's right under $12,000. And then implementation services is a range between $3,250 and $6,400, depending on our system's capability. I'd like to show you a short demo of the product. I am sorry I only have one vendor at this time, but again, I could only find one that serves students and employees with the help of LACO, but here we go, and cross our fingers. 1 second, I just want to make sure the volume is up.
Of all the challenges schools have faced this year, knowing how to safely reopen might be the biggest challenge yet. The Qualtrics Back to School solutions make it easy to implement safety measures that keep your students and staff safe and healthy, even in the absence of widespread testing. COVID-19 created unprecedented disruption to school operations this spring. Know exactly what your community needs to reopen school this fall by implementing expert-designed automated solutions. The Back to School XM solutions help education organizations surface issues and equip staff to take immediate action in response to student and family needs. Understand shifting community expectations and take action to build confidence and trust, and create transparency through digital open doors with your community to get feedback, share updates, and optimize online experiences. Let's take a look at some of these solutions now. The Qualtrics Pulse and Check-in solutions allow you to continuously monitor and adapt to evolving student and family needs and expectations. You'll be able to use these tools to share guidance, available support resources, and updates about school operations to your community. As things change, you'll be able to capture key insights to help decide on what targeted action you should take to improve community confidence. You will also be able to confirm that your planned actions and next steps are effectively communicated and understood. Qualtrics symptom tracking and self-certification solutions give you an easy but powerful way to interact with your community by asking them to provide updated symptom information on a regular basis. Your community can be reminded to provide updates via automated messages. And when they are providing updates, they will be able to do it from a desktop computer or a mobile device. They will be presented with a series of questions which are based on CDC guidelines, asking about several categories of symptoms. If someone from your community indicates that they have new symptoms, they will be routed to a page with instructions on what to do next and a clear indication that they should not go to school that day. If they don't have new symptoms, they will be presented with a certification indicating that they are safe to return to school for the day. The questions that are asked and what happens at the end of the process are very customizable. If you'd like to modify the solution to capture information specific to your community or use case, it's easy to make those changes. The Qualtrics platform is meant to be easily customizable. For example, if you'd like to begin collection information about who might have traveled to a different region, it's easy to add that to the form without any coding or reliance on IT or consultants. What happens after the respondent provides their information can also be customized as well. For example, if a student indicates they have new symptoms, you can have Qualtrics automatically send a message to the appropriate people to let them know what has happened and what they should do as next steps. To reopen safely, schools will need to establish effective and transparent processes to maintain cleanliness and rebuild trust. The Qualtrics Back to School solutions help schools manage and track their cleaning procedures, as well as offer listening channels where students and staff can help share real-time feedback when they need refilled cleaning supplies or disinfecting in learning spaces. These listening channels can create tickets to alert school staff when action is required. Additionally, Qualtrics offers solutions that can provide your community a way to stop the spread of contagions by allowing those who do contract them to share who they might have been in contact with and where they might have been while they were contagious. In the event that someone at your school tests positive for COVID-19, the Qualtrics contact tracing solution will help notify students and staff who might have been in contact with the affected person so they can immediately start practicing appropriate safety measures and get tested themselves. After schools have reopened, ongoing touch points that measure student and teacher well-being and confidence will allow staff to identify where they need to focus attention to best support student wellness. Thank you for taking the time today to learn more about how Qualtrics can help you and your community get back to learning.
Okay, there's a few things I want to point out. Another advantage of this program is it just doesn't track systems and contact tracing, but it's an open channel of communication for anything that we pretty much need for COVID-19 in terms of staff and parent communication. Know that we never share anybody's name. It's completely confidential and anonymous. So say if we do notify staff or students that they may have been in contact with someone who has the virus, it's all anonymous and confidential. So none of that information is shared for HIPAA rules and laws. I mean, COVID, we're at a heightened awareness, and there's certain things that as an HR person, I am allowed to ask for, like doctor's notes, clearance notes. I can assist with my staff because we are confidential employees. The other one is the ease of the program. If kids or parents do not have access to a phone or a computer that night before to do the questions in the morning or the evening before, it is something quick that we can do as they come in. We will be taking temperatures as they come in, so we can do that data analysis and answer those questions for the student if the students weren't able to complete it. Also, Qualtrics has also informed me that it could pull data from the thermometer read, so we can track that data as well if the thermometer or thermal system has certain integration capabilities. So I know I gave you a lot of information. Again, the purpose of this is to be able to do the system and contact tracing as quickly as possible to notify those people in the zone of contact of a person that might have been ill. It's also to make sure that people who need resources have them as quickly as possible. So with that, I would like to open it up to questions.
Okay, can we get a motion and a second, please?
Move to approve. Smith?
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by member Nolenberg. All right, now are there any questions or comments?
Yes, this is Melissa. Who would be using the system? Would they be at the school sites, only at the district level, all the nurses? Like who's going to use this?
Okay, for Melissa, it's for all families and staff. It's for everyone that we choose to have. Actually, there'll be a parent-student portal part and a staff employee parent portal part where they can get on and answer the questions or access information that they may need. The actual data and aggregate of data and notifications, we as a district personnel staff would get that information along with the district nurse and then make sure that everything is going out properly in terms of communication and whatever needs to happen. But it's basically a system tracker. So if a child reports that they're sick, they obviously are told not to come to school, and then it activates a domino effect. It lets us know, and then we're able to reach out to the family and give assistance and next steps. And then also notify people who would have been in that contact zone of that child and from what date.
And are we going to provide training or resources to the users?
Yes, we would. The training is actually, I ran through it myself, is very, very simple. It kind of resembles a survey where I just click on the dots and then hit submit. But Melissa, we could do the survey, do the training, and there'll be online training if they want to do another training. But to be honest, if a family is having any difficulty answering the questions, when they come into school the next day, we can walk them through it when the child shows up to school. Whether we have Chromebooks or whatever, there's an administrator with the phone, we can easily walk them through the steps so they can do it the next day on their own, or whenever we want to require, often we want to require the system checking. I know Qualtrics says every day, but we can work, we can work with the board and the sites to determine if every day needs to be every day or every other day, whatever fits our need.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions or comments?
Yes, Donna, this is Mike. I just want to share how impressed I am with how well this fits into the presentation and the plan that Kim presented every year. Contact tracing is an integral part of the whole plan. I do have two questions associated with this. There was mention about the LACO, possibly LACO implementing this as well. Is there a district where we can piggyback and maybe team up with to get this license?
Michael, you are fading just a little bit. I was able to get the information from LACO on I do weekly seminars with LACO and other HR people. I know LACO, the HR department there has been working with Qualtrics, not just for this, but for other things. I don't know if they've actually decided to purchase the product other than they are the only product that serves students and teachers easily right now. So, and we all are under a time crunch. I wish I heard the second part of your question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, sorry. I just turn off my video so my audio has more bandwidth.
Okay.
The 25,000, that's for the 1 year, right?
Yes.
Basically, once the vaccine comes out, we don't really need the software. Right?
Say again. Once
Okay.
the vaccine comes out, no.
Right. Once everybody's vaccinated and this virus goes away, then we don't really need to reinvest 25,000 each year.
Correct. And we
Okay.
hope that's sooner than later. But until then, whether we choose to use a digital platform or not, we are responsible for contact tracing. And right now what I'm doing is I basically, with students, we don't have students right now, but with staff, anyone who falls ill or comes under, contact, they contact me. I walk them through the steps and then we try to identify everyone they've been around. So kind of a lengthy process.
I have one more question, and we do have SB 117. I think we might have used it up. We have FEMA and the CARES Act. I don't know how much we can tap in, or not so much tap in, but for FEMA, we have to get a reimbursement. Can we reimburse against FEMA for this?
Michael, I'm not sure, Marianne can help me out. I'm sure FEMA will be able to reimburse some stuff, but I'm sure I'm not sure exactly how this adds to it. I'm sure we've in excess of that, but I'm sure Marianne can answer that if need be moving forward. Because obviously FEMA is not going to be able to cover every expense, but I know they're able to cover some.
Okay.
FEMA's a little less flexible about software, but ESSER and CARES have options for software. So we definitely have a place to look for some reimbursement.
Thank you, Marianne. You're always my source of knowledge for the money part.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Lynn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Espinosa?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Item 11 is approval of coordinator of student data and integrated technology.
Okay, that is also me. I want to give some background history.
Wait.
Can you hear me, Mike?
Did you want me to read Ellen's comment now, Donna?
Sorry.
What was Ellen's comment for this item or for item 12?
Well, it said hold it till number 11.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought it was for item 12. Go ahead and read it.
I think it's both. It says TCUSD school board members. It is obvious that Dr. Fricker believes her current team will allow the district to meet the challenges we are facing. Our directors, CBO, and associate superintendents have all been working 18 hours a day and weekends. They are currently working 410 days, yet I'm still getting texts, calls, and emails from directors on their days off. Over the years, I have spoken to our current and past superintendents, assistant superintendents, directors, and coordinators. Consistently, they stated how heavy the workload at the district office is. Being that we are a small district, the departments are not staffed deeply, and many times the tasks that district employees fulfill are varied and distributed oddly. For example, Director Hannah Getty began working on the help desk when school closed. To me, this doesn't seem like an appropriate task for a director of student services. 2 years ago, I requested more district office staff when Dr. Makowitz became charged with 2 departments because our educators need support from the district, and one form of support is to hire additional staff within reason to share the workload. Yet another form of support is to keep our current employees working in TC because when turnover is frequent and employees are continually replaced, our educators don't get supported. It is possible that increasing the salaries would allow TC to retain the current directors and allow our district to have some stability while continuing to support our teachers. As fiscal stewards of the district, please review Ms. Sorrell's budget presentation on June 24th and take particular notice of the deficit spending in all 3 years. Where there are funds coming from to support directors' increases and the direct coordinator of student data and integrated technology position. This is a critical time where we need to come together to do important work to educate students, and hiring a coordinator of student data and integrated technology supports educators' use of an LMS. The fiscal impact of the agenda items 11 and 12 are different from the actual salaries. When discussing the proposal, will the board determine what the exact pay increases is for each director and determine a more exact salary for a coordinator? The fiscal impact appears to be higher than the actual salaries. Will you have a thoughtful discussion about the state of our budget and if our district can afford the increases? TCEA will be keeping track of these administrative changes and hires, as well as any future proposals to hire additional personnel to determine if the administrative changes will equal the vacancy left behind by the Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services. I hope the school board will do the same. Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Marie, for reading that. Okay, I'm sorry, Monica, you can continue.
Okay, I kind of want to give a little backstory before I start on the position. With the resignation of the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, we as a district staff, in communication with the unions, we always, no matter what position it is that becomes vacated, we take a look at it critically to make sure whether we need to rehire that or repurpose the salary and benefits to serve other needs. The other part of it is part of the classified study, and I'd like to refer to something Art and Robin said. We were trying to be fiscally responsible at every point in the journey of classified study, but even the classified study lended it to self that we needed extra support in not only technology, special ed and grounds, but they really outlined that we needed a balance between instructional technology and then just the maintenance compartment, maintenance part of technology that we didn't quite have. So trying to repurpose some of the salary from the assistant superintendent spot, this coordinator, we have so much going on as we move into the LMS platform. So we are proposing this to provide support for our staff and students as we make this transition to that. But it's not only for that. We have to make sure we have an increase of the maintenance on one-to-one devices, just managing that alone and managing a staff to make sure we're servicing the needs of our staffs and students in terms of devices. We also need to make sure that our student information system is running properly, that data is being put in accurately, that our students can be assigned to whether it's curriculum or to a program. It's something that I know I've only been with the district 2 years, but it's something that we haven't had the instructional support piece to go along with the maintenance factor. So we are proposing to fill this gap with this new position. So if you take a quick look, I know you guys have your agenda reports, but this person would help with the LMS, with the comprehensive system of collecting and managing student data that meets federal and state and local mandates, help us aggregate and provide reports regarding various types of data. We'll be able to evaluate the current software, hardware, technology that we currently have, provide training to site admin and teachers to develop, administer, and use data program and data to improve student engagement and achievement, and just make sure all of our systems are working. So we don't have any lag in instruction or any frustration for staff or students in trying to learn on these digital platforms. So on the bottom, the impact on it is $125,000 from the general fund. And let me explain what that is. It is obviously it's the top end of the scale, because eventually that person, you know, if they work 5 years in the district, will reach the end of that scale. But it also, everything that's listed for a salary also includes benefits. So it's not just their salary, but it's their benefits, the statutory and the benefits that we give them as a district all together. So it may look high as a salary. It's only because it includes the benefits and everything else. So I would like to open it up for questions. And Marianne, if I'm misstating anything in terms of salary or benefits, please feel free to correct me.
Okay, why don't we get a motion and a second first?
I'll move to approve, Smith.
Okay, motion by member Smith.
I'll second.
Second by member Espinosa. Okay, are there questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, I will go ahead and vote. I'll go first. I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Espinosa?
Yes.
And member Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 5-0. Item 12 is approval of Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Executive Director of Special Education, and Executive Director of Student Support Services and Technology. Do we have a staff report on that?
Yes, if you take a look, I'm just gonna give us some history again on just the decision-making process. Again, we, as an executive cabinet, you know, we survey staff, we talk to unions, we look at gaps that we have, and taking a look at to decrease one executive cabinet management position is a big decision we made. But we made it in the best interest of staff and students, because our whole goal is to best support our staff and students, not only in the reopening of schools safely, but just, we have a lot, we have the LMS, we have curriculum adoptions, and you know, we have areas that we need support. I already talked about technology, you know, rostering students, analyzing data, working with the LMS. We also have need in personnel. We have workflow due to COVID-19 leaves. We have increased paperwork and verifications to, you know, refinancing of homes, and people are taking loans at a faster pace than normal for financial assistance. We don't want to add to the district budget, but we want to spend responsibly, and to make sure we have areas of coverage in special ed and student support and curriculum instruction. We felt this was a good decision moving forward, because let's take a look at, I'm going to start with the Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction. Basically what will happen, or what we're proposing will happen, is the duties of the assistant soup will be divided among the executive staff and the current directors. So the Director of Curriculum Instruction will provide leadership and support for equitable high quality education for all students, provides professional learning oversight and support for instructional programs, making sure that we have mastery of the California state standards with a focus on all learners, EL, special ed, foster, and homeless youth. And that will be TK through 12. Not just elementary, not just secondary, but everyone. And we will be taking a look at not only our TK through 12, but expanding our preschool program. We also have the Executive Director of Special Ed. So taking on the duties of the assistant soup in terms of mediation and oversight, coordinates the research and implementation of effective instructional programs for our special ed students. During the classified study, we have expanded our definition of an instructional aid for paraprofessionals, special ed aides 1 and 2, take over home hospital, and also the adult transition program, which will be new to us. So that will be encompassed under the special ed executive director. And the executive director of student services and technology, again, that person will not only manage the support services department, child welfare, attendance, health services, but they will also provide management of the technology department, because we'll have the maintenance part and the instructional part, and that she'll be able to oversee that department to make sure they're responsive, to make sure they're meeting the needs of our staff and students as we transition into distance learning and the LMS for COVID-19. And when we exit out of COVID-19, we've invested all this money in technology, and it can only benefit us in the future. So now let me take a look at the impact to funding source. Now, I know it says 130, and we will take a look at that, but that is if each of these directors continue with us for 3 to 5 years. And that includes salary and benefits. It's not going to be $130,000. It's basically, if you take a look at their current salary and what we're proposing, it's less than $500. So just to give you, I think it becomes, if my math is right, it's rough. And with that, I would like to open it up with questions.
Okay, first we're going to, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second so we can discuss it. Someone like to make a motion?
I will move to approve.
Okay, motion by member Smith. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by member Nolenberg. And now we can have questions and discussion. Is there questions, discussion?
I have a question. So looking at like a job description for the directors, have they kind of, if we add these job responsibilities of the assistant soup to their plate, are they now kind of outgrowing their current classification?
Melissa, the current classification is director. So basically, it's an executive director. An executive director, if you take a look at other districts, it is a bit more responsibility in terms of supervising other people. It's more oversight, more, more active role in the budget and the decision-making process. It also, they're included in executive cabinet. And as you know, those are confidential matters. Directors really don't deal with confidential matters, but when you move them into the executive director spot, to be at that table, confidentiality is important. That will help with that component. But it is an increase in responsibilities, an increase of oversight, and we are training them to be an assistant soup and eventually a soup someday if they want to do that. But the executive director, having 3 plus, the 3 existing cabinet members, we feel like we are capable of dividing that responsibility of the current assistant soup, because we have so much need in other areas. We have need with the adult transition, we have need in technology, we have need in, just departments like in HR that just need more assistance and more guidance.
I just want to add one.
Oh, good.
I just want to add on one thing. For example, when Dr. Gomez came into the district a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, she came in as director of elementary curriculum and instruction. So not only has her role expanded, we did have a director of elementary and a director of secondary. My first year, we did eliminate that position, director of secondary, and collapse that. That largely went to that assistant superintendent role, and now that will officially slide to her as TK through 12, and she will guide and govern and develop those plans, those 3-year plans for the curriculum instruction of TK through 12. So in terms of the role that they were hired in for and the director role they were hired in for, and now the role that they will be asked to do, they are taking on quite an extensive load in terms of student services and attendance and discipline, SARB, those types of things, triaging, intervention, counseling departments was something that Ms. Getty was originally hired in for. Now taking on communications and information technology and technology, she is assuming that role and that supervisory role to navigate that department as well as her student services department. So it is not, they are taking on a significant portion to what they were originally contractually hired in to do. So
And it sounds like it better aligns with an executive director than their current classification.
Right, and the other alternative to this would be to hire back for the assistant superintendent role. And to expend a great deal of resource for one person, one role, when we can divide it and then provide different resources across the district to service the students and the staff who are going to be using digital curriculum to a larger extent, or being reliant on these systems underneath to support them. I would rather put the systems and the money underneath the staff rather than under myself. So
yeah, I think I like the idea of
you
collapsing collapsing the hierarchy a little bit so that we can spread the funds across a broader scope.
right. And the alternative would be, which we have the ability to do as well, is just to replace the assistant superintendent role. So it's an or. Either we spread it across or we replace the role that was vacated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Okay, are there other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a couple. So I've disabled my video to make sure my audio. We're looking at a number of days increase per position.
No, it's right now it's 225.
So it's really an increase in per diem pay, right?
Yes.
Okay. The other is in the coordinator's position, it says it will be reporting to the assistant super of instruction. So in this case, that coordinator position will be reporting to an executive director position, right?
Yes, but at the time we put the job thing through, we don't have the executive, so I would change that out when allowed.
Okay, so the contract year, not so much contract year, we're talking about the positive work year remains at 225.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is pretty much the max for administrators within, Los Angeles County. I mean, I could look at different work years, but positive work calendar right now, when they're not on contract, is 225. If there was a contract thing that we wanted to consider, we can consider that.
Right. 225 is maxed out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, are there other questions or comments? Okay, I had one comment I wanted to make. I think I would have preferred in the staff report just to have show the new salary scale and to just show it for 1 year, what the 1 year impact would be, because that 130,000 really threw me back, and I think it was kind of misleading. Now that I understand it better, I'm more comfortable with it, but just for future reference, for me it was a little shocking. So
okay, just to know if my math is correct, it is under 50,000 for all three of them with salary and benefits per year.
Okay, so would their benefits change?
Marianne, help me, but I believe the benefits are on the percentage of salary, correct or not correct? Did I lose Marianne?
The retirement, maybe.
Yes. So roughly what I've always been taught is I always multiply by 20%. I know it might be a little less than that. So 20% of their salary goes to benefits, whatever those are, statutory, retirement, whatever. If I'm saying it wrong, please, Marianne, let me know. But that's always been my guideline, Donna. So that I've used.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I was assuming that, but I wasn't sure. Just to kind of summarize this, we're looking at 50,000 a year to get the same work done, an additional 50,000 a year, as opposed to paying for an assistant superintendent, which would be how much per year?
I believe 220 with benefits.
Okay. So
plus we're adding a coordinator of student data and integrated technology.
Yes, but I think I could get that under what the assistant soup was.
But the difference between the assistant soup and the executive directors would be about 170,000 that we would save. And then we're looking at the new coordinator for technology, which was 125. So we're still saving money.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Are there other questions or comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
Member Smith?
Yes.
Member Espinosa?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that motion carries 5-0. Next is the consent calendar. These are routine items approved by one motion and one vote unless a member of the board or audience requests that any item be reviewed and voted upon separately. So would someone like to make a motion and second?
Move to approve, Smith.
Motion by member Smith.
Second.
Second by member Espinosa. Okay, are there any questions or comments? Okay, member Smith?
Yes.
Member Espinosa?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0. Oops. My papers are stuck together. Just a second. Okay. Are there any board comments?
Yes, I wanted to ask that at a future meeting that we talk.
Hold on, Melissa. The next item is future agenda items. Is that what you want?
Yeah, I thought
right
we were
now,
on 17.
Yeah, 17 is just board comments.
Okay.
And then the next item is future agenda items.
Okay.
So any board comments? Okay, then we'll move on to 18 future agenda items. So, Melissa?
Yes. So I too received the email regarding sexual harassment, and I really wanted to, at a future meeting, understand what is our student-to-student sexual harassment policy, and at least, what types of things are we, informing our students about in terms of practical application. Like, they should at least know what is welcome and when something is unwelcomed. And they also need to know what avenues that are available to report, alleged sexual harassment. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart based on my own personal high school experiences. And so I really would like to understand what we're doing about this.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any future agenda items? Okay. We'll move on to item 19, which is additional public comment on agendized and non-agendized items. Is there any additional public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to adjournment. And it is 9:24. Can I get a motion and a second?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by member Nolenberg, second by member Smith.
Fine.
Okay. We'll vote on it. Member Espinosa?
Yes.
Member Lynn?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Member Nolenberg?
Yes.
And member Smith?
Yes.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on July 22nd.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
It's not you, they can't see you. Come here. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Marie.
You're welcome.
Hope you feel better.
Thank you so much.